Sandy, roll call.
Councilmember Mazzoni.
Here.
Councilmember Palfini.
Here.
Councilmember Viraston is absent. Councilmember Wetsby. Here. Excuse me. Mayor Parham.
We'll excuse him for now. I get a motion to excuse Pet, who won't be here tonight.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Any changes on the agenda or urgency items? Nothing? Okay. And a motion to accept the agenda as written.
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda as written.
A second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Non-agenda public comment. Now's the time for any member of the audience who wants to speak on an item that is not on the agenda has the privilege to do so now. The council cannot take any action.
Oh, okay. My name's Colette Winlock, and thank you for the time. I'm here to ask the council to begin to start looking at the housing that here in Weed, as well as in the Lake Christina area, even though I know you basically deal with Weed. But I'm here as an advocate for tiny houses. And I believe that tiny houses, whether we want to or not, they're coming. And I think it's important that the city of Weed begin to get ahead of the curve and to take a look at what might be the standards and what are the possibilities for, you know, the tiny houses to exist here in Weed. I know that a lot of seniors are looking for affordable housing. I've talked to some young people, you know, the young ones that graduate high school, and either they're going to leave or they're going to have to stay with their mom and dad. And there's a way that I believe tiny houses can be that next step to hopefully ask, you know, to get the young people that live here and we to want to stay. I think you know that Mount Shasta has implemented an ordinance. I'm aware that Dunsmuir is also in the process. So I'm asking if the city of Weed can also get in the process to take a look at, well, what would tiny houses look like here in the city of Weed, and what would be the benefits of it? And so that's basically why I'm here tonight. And I do have a few people here to speak as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ken? Right now, neither McKenzie or the mayor can hear anything.
The mayor, neither one of them are here?
They're here, they can't hear anything.
Oh, they can't hear. That presents a problem. Okay. So let's slow this down for 1 second so we have our legal counsel and our mayor who is attending by Zoom. We can get some voice on them.
Ms. Colette, could you come back to the podium and spell your last name for me, please?
C-O-L-E-T-T-E, Winlock, W-I-N-L-O-C-K.
Wonderful, thank you.
Should we hear it? Okay. Okay. Any other non-public comments on non-agenda items?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Mario Birch, and I'm running for District 3 Supervisor, and so I just wanted to attend your meeting.
A little closer to the mic, yes, sir. Okay.
I just wanted to come and introduce myself and see who all was on the City Council. Mario Birch. So anyways, nice to meet y'all. And so a little about myself, 24-year Air Force Security Forces veteran, and worked for the road department for 25 years. Have a pretty vast knowledge of kind of infrastructure and what we kind of the things I see is what we need to do. Kind of the things that I would really like to push forward is one agriculture and forestry, and infrastructure and public safety. I think that's kind of the things that we are really needing to focus on a little bit more. And say again. I can get you one, yeah. How about if I just talk a little louder? Does that work?
That's perfect. Come on, Mario. That's
Yeah.
it. We got the crowd back up.
I've been told that before, that my voice is just that tone that people can't quite hear it.
It's
I
good
feel
now.
like I'm yelling at people. Anyways, Supervisor District 3. But I just wanted to kind of introduce myself and let you know kind of that I'm here and what I'm looking forward to do. Thank you.
Welcome.
Mario, just for our voters who are going to be within your district area, will you be on the ballot, or is it a write-in?
No, I'm on the ballot.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Good question. Any other non-public, non-agenda item comments? I see we have it.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Noah Moshabani. Do you need me to spell that?
Yes, please.
Noa is the first name, last name Mohlabane.
Thank you.
And I just want to second what Colette stated so clearly, and hope that you'll be willing to put on next month's agenda to look at the ordinance that Mount Shasta approved for tiny houses, to begin the discussion of what might be possible here in Reed. And the only point I would want to add is that with the extreme fire hazards that we have here, having a home that can be hooked up to your truck and driven off, given enough evacuation warning time, might be an incredible way of dealing with the fire hazards that we have here. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Oh, we have a whole slew tonight. All right.
Namaste, yate, and aloha.
How are you?
I'm really good. How are you? My name is Clay Neil Pononui Hano Hano Afa Ihere Garrigan. AFA, Afa. Last name Garrigan, Garrigan, like Nancy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just got donated land in Lake Shastina, so hi, resident and friend. So I'm from Mount Shasta, and I represent the YEAH movement. Y-E-A-H stands for Yes to Expedite Affordable / Alternative Housing. We helped with the city in planning to bring 30 people together to push the tiny house ordinance through. You are welcome, because we just got the Tiny House Association president that writes all the ordinances for all the other big cities down south to come to a meeting with the city manager, city planning, septic water hookup, and the inspector, which is a miracle, to put everybody under one umbrella and talk about the ordinance. It's 99% correct, because he's the big guy that wrote all the ordinances for all the other cities down south. And he only made one little suggestion that we're going to change one little wording because it just changed last year, so a legal terminology. And so the city of Mount Shasta is going to take the ordinance, and then we'll take a new vote to upgrade the ordinance to make it even stronger, so that by the time the city of Weed comes on board, by the time the city of Dunsmuir comes on board, the ripple effect's going to come out, and that's where we're going. We are on the edge of a demographic cliff. We have baby boomers that are making their graduation and ascension. We have youngins in elementary, high school, and the college. That housing is difficult, it's tricky. We have an average income Siskiyou-wide, which is about 40,000, is our medium average for one individual. If you're lucky to have a partnership, that's still not a lot of money. So if that's what you make, 40,000, you need to times it by 3, that's about 120,000. That's what you can afford for a mortgage. $150,000 home. In Mount Shasta, we're about $500,000. Here, $350,000 everywhere. That's our trick. And so this Saturday, we're having another community dinner with a tiny house on wheels as a tour on 954 Old Stage Road. It's the Old Nazarene Church at 5 p.m. Last time we had city planning commissions and city council members and tiny house manufacturers coming together to answer Q&A, just to get everybody on the same page. And so City of Dunsmuir is pressing for a 7.5 Airbnb cap, because Mount Shasta already has a 3% cap, Reading is a 1% cap. Not quite sure what the City of Weed might be, but at least the discussions are happening. I just got back from a commercial building, which is okay for tiny houses in the City of Mount Shasta city limits. So right now we're pressing with the city to start a pilot program using surplus lands. Might have 1, 2, or 3 little tiny houses, but that's where we're going. So we know that the City of Weed and City of Dunsmuir and everybody else, I'm going to go see the mayor tomorrow in Wairika. The conversation is just going to keep moving forward. We appreciate you. We love you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I am Charlene Hurst. I live in Lake Chastina, and I consider Weed my town and my community. I am with these people tonight, and the Recharge Weed momentum is building. Along with revitalizing downtown, we are happy to bring trending ideas of new, innovative, affordable housing options to the City Council, and we are ready to work with all of you and to bring this vision forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? No? Okay. Any more comments from the public? Seeing no more questions, the council will move on to council member announcements, meetings, reports, and comments. Is Darrell live and actionable? Does he want to make a comment? Mayor Torres?
Yeah, the mayor is there.
There he is. Any comments? There's not Darrell. That's not. I'm looking at my readers, okay? Anyway, Mark, any comments? Melissa?
I will just note that Daryl, myself, and Dustin went to the LOLA meeting last night in Mount Shasta. They did a lovely job putting it together. Some interesting things about tax measures was discussed before I had to leave based on my other job. So it sort of interrupted. Maybe Dustin has some more updates for that. I'm still following closely what's going on with the Weed Elementary School and the ballot measure that is coming up. I would encourage everyone to at least do their homework and their reading in regard to that. And if you haven't been up to see where our elementary school is, I invite you, especially on a very windy day, to go enjoy our elementary school way up on the hill and see why it is, and form your own opinion on what you would like to do in that particular measure. But it's definitely forefront and center in a lot of conversations that I've been having. That's it for me.
I'll jump on that. And I did not go to any meetings that need to be noted. However, the school board issue, the school issue is something that's preeminent for our town. I won't enter any more comment than that. I would ask our city manager Did you have any comments regarding the tax measures last night?
The only thing that we talked about at Lola is that the cities with data centers and fulfillment centers apparently are taking all the tax revenue. At the point they were talking about the point of negotiation. Under old school laws, I think I'm still need to memorize my citations for that, but it used to be that the point of sale is wherever you purchase the product is wherever the sales tax revenue goes. Well, now what seems to be happening is wherever the fulfillment centers are and wherever the order happens in that fulfillment center, that is where the tax revenue is going. And that's been happening since 2019, according to what they said at the meeting. So what they are hoping to do is to gather all of the small municipalities together and start pushing back at the state to update the law to account for that, so we can start recollecting some of the lost tax revenue. I would need to do more research to get there or know how the measure affected us before I can comment further, but that's conceptually what they were talking about.
Are there any tax measures or bills present in the California Senate or House?
They have got a slew of bills, and so what I am planning to do is Cal Cities has sent me a list of them. I am going to go through all of them and send them to council.
All right, thanks.
So you're aware of them.
Okay, can you guys hear my audio now?
Yes.
Excellent.
Are you there, Daryl? All right, okay.
I've been here the whole time, just having technical difficulties with the microphone and camera system on my city laptop.
Okay. Did you have anything to add?
If it's my turn, yes. So the first thing I attended since last meeting was the Chamber of Commerce Chinese Auction fundraiser. That was a great event, big turnout. Everybody had a good time. As was stated before by Councilmember Wettstein, we did attend the League of Local Agencies meeting last night. I've been doing a deep dive on the fulfillment center point of negotiation for the taxes and that interpretation under the current California Constitution. I'd like to remind everybody that we have our town hall listening session Tuesday night at 6 o'clock at the City Hall building, now that we're re-inhabiting that building. And I'd like to invite everybody from the community to come and discuss that topic specifically, along with any others they have. That greatly affects all the communities in California that don't have fulfillment centers, but especially us in Siskiyou County.
That's on Tuesday, you said, the 14th?
Tuesday at 6 p.m.
6 p.m. All right, with that said, we will move on to the next item. It's a presentation from John Curtis from FACS, and I don't know what that acronym stands for, but somebody fill me in. Is he here? Is he online?
Yes.
Okay. All right, speak to our backs.
Yeah, Dustin, do you want me to just start from the beginning, or do you want to introduce what we're talking about? Or?
I'll let you go and jump into it. I've already forwarded everything to council. Okay.
So FACS stands for Forensic Analytical Consulting Services, just to answer that question. The issue at hand here is the condition of the city council building, or the city hall, I'm sorry.
Yep.
I guess just starting at the beginning of what I understand, the history maybe, from my understanding, the history might be more involved than what I understand, but from what I understand, an inspection was done in December of 2024, some conclusions were reached. There were about the water, the condition of the roof and the effect that water was having on the building. The roof was replaced, I believe. Yeah, we did, then that inspection was done by a different company. We got involved in December of 2025. We did some various, we did an old inspection throughout the building and some supportive asbestos and lead sampling in case of in preparation for materials having to be disturbed as part of any remediation that we might recommend. We made some conclusions based on our observations on the air quality in the building and the any evidence of damage that we saw that we recommended remediation, which either meant treating or removing the affected space. Remediation was undertaken in December and remediation was started in December and on into January. We came out in January after remediation was completed. Remediation entailed some areas that were actually materials were actually removed. Parts of the ceiling, parts of the walls were actually removed. Other areas was more of a cleaning and treating in place. And we did a clearance at that point, or generally what we would refer to as a post-remediation assessment. At that point, determined that all areas that we had identified as with recommendations have been addressed, that the air quality was acceptable, was unremarkable, not elevated. And then we came back out again last week once all the areas were kind of built back and the condition was back to a presentable state. We went back out again last week to check it one more time before considering reoccupancy of the building. And we identified that the areas that had a substantial amount of work done had been built back and it looked great. The areas that were just cleaning and treating was performed. We saw those areas were cleaned. So there's some materials that still look a little stained, which would make sense if they were just cleaned. We collected air samples again. Those air samples again were fine, not elevated. We did make a general recommendation for the exterior envelope. It does look like there's still some weathering on the exterior around windows, and we made a recommendation that that get checked and that the performance and the effectiveness of the windows and exterior in general are evaluated to make sure that this issue does not present itself again. And that's the high level overview. I'm happy to get into the details of anything in there if you'd like me to, but I didn't want to go too deep without questions. So, any questions so far? Or to that?
Would you work in that building every day without any concerns?
Yes.
Excellent.
That's a very good question because I think that's kind of the ultimate. I don't know if staff has not, we have limited staff that has been in the building already. Okay. And have we had any negative impacts?
Not that I've heard of, no.
All right. So I guess the truth is in pudding, as they say, and
Does that mean
everybody comes back to it, right?
Does that mean we get a ribbon cutting ceremony for the new building?
No, but I can give you a trophy or something.
I think that was proposed. I think actually there is, I know you're being facetious, but I think that was proposed by the chamber.
I want to ask some of the staff that's in here, how they feel. Are they comfortable going from that building where they're at now into the building that is there now? And is there anything else that we could possibly do to make sure it's completely safe? And I'm going to go by what the gentleman is saying. I mean, he's a professional, but I do want to know, and my concerns are for the staff that are in that building, period. It always has been.
Well, I guess my question would be, the difference I noticed between the testing that you did, John, and the testing the previous company did, was they did an aggressive test and you did a passive test. Is that correct?
Correct.
And the test you just did was another passive test?
Correct.
Can you explain the difference to us?
Sure. So, an aggressive test is generally, I don't remember if they went into specifics about exactly how they did it, but generally when speaking of doing aggressive air sampling, you are taking usually a leaf blower, sometimes in conjunction with like box fans, and you're going into a space and you are intentionally forcing air into the corners and various crevices and cracks and things to try and agitate the space, get all that dust up into the air, and, the two sides of that issue are, one, well, if the dust is there, I want to pick it up in the air so I can sample it and see and properly evaluate what is present in the room. The other side of that is you are creating an environment that is unrepresentative of what it typically is during occupancy. No one's walking in there on a daily basis with a leaf blower and kicking it up. And this building is over 100 years old from what I understand. So it is not surprising at all that you would pick up decades worth of dust in there. That's how you weigh those things. So the previous consultant chose to do an assertive, aggressive air sampling method. We generally don't do that outside of controlled environments. Meaning I wouldn't do that unless the vents were covered up and the windows were covered up and that kind of thing. I can control where that dust was going. Because I don't know what kind of environment I'm creating when I do that. And this building does have asbestos in it, so if you go in there and just start disturbing and kicking up a bunch of asbestos, what happens then? So it's not doing a non-aggressive air sampling is our typical approach.
I have one more question. So, do we need to retest this again in the future, or is it something that we don't do anything until there's something noticeable, or there's a change? So, I mean, what do we do? Are we finished now with your company, or should we have it retested at a later date, whatever, a year, 2 years, whatever? I'm not quite sure with it.
In its current state, I don't believe you need any sort of follow-up investigation from us. The building is old, and if new water leaks develop, something happens, there's always the possibility something happens down the line. But as a building operator and manager, your responsibility just to kind of maintain the building, monitor the building for changes in condition, that never really goes away. So, if the building is maintained and everything looks great, and you guys are regularly looking at the building, or whoever's responsible is regularly looking at the building, this sort of thing would not be needed. You wouldn't need to go through this again in the foreseeable future. But yeah, it's just in an old building like that, things can change. So that's why we kind of recommended you guys have I keep saying you guys, I'm sorry, have the city inspect the outside of the building, how the windows are seated in the building, make sure that that's still in good condition, and assuming the building exterior is in good shape, because we just did replace the roof. Assuming the rest of the building is in good shape, then you wouldn't have to go through something like this for a while. Unless, of course, there's always plumbing. Plumbing things can go wrong too, and then you have the property inside, not the outside.
Thank you.
So what I just heard was that the building at this moment in time is okay. It does reflect the fact that if a building has age, which it does, that we occasionally should monitor if there is a breach in the shell. So when you have an old structure, and like we've had on a number of occasions where we've had a roof leak and they weren't attended to properly, or we just plain missed it, we need to be a little bit more thorough in anything moving forward. We can't, if the roof comes loose, we've got to make sure that it's dry underneath. We can't let this was a very expensive lesson for us. I don't even know so much it was a lesson, it's just an element of time has a lot to do with this. The fact that we've replaced that roof or repaired that roof, I don't know how many times. And so going forward, if there's a breach somewhere, we need to be on top of it. We can't let our infrastructure just go. So, and I would still say that those that were impacted need to be sensitive to the fact that when you go back, you are the kind of the judge a little bit of that. all I saw was a lot of numbers and a lot of less thans and more thans, and he did a passive test, he did an aggressive test, or he didn't do aggressive, but somebody else did an aggressive test. Again, comes from the same thing. If you go into those areas that don't get much air circulation, there's probably a little bit more moisture. So as you circulate that, I think that's almost a natural occurrence as well. I know in insurance, we go in and remediate this stuff pretty constantly. There is always the chance this stuff comes back. This doesn't happen very often. That's what we pay so dearly through water damages these days. But I think, again, as long as we look at our buildings and just don't let them go, and I think we have a city manager currently that's heavy duty on infrastructure anyway. I think, again, we just need to play it by ear, but I'm pretty confident that they wouldn't be giving us the stamp of approval. I don't know how their liability runs, but if they give us the stamp of approval, maybe he can help. If you give us the stamp of approval and something goes on down the road, do you have any responsibility to those actions?
Yeah, I mean, if it's something that is, was within our scope of work and it was something we simply missed, there's some responsibility on my part there. These things are living, I don't want to call them creatures, but these things are alive. They do tend to grow, develop, move. So there's always the possibility that things change, conditions can change after the fact. So, it's kind of dynamic in that way. But yeah, to answer your question, sure. I share some of the responsibility for our conclusions here. They're my conclusions. I should share some responsibility for the condition of the site, I should say.
Okay.
But yeah, the conclusions are ours.
And that's one of the facts why some of this is costing us so much. We're responsible, so you're responsible as well. So it's kind of we started to share a little bit here on how we deal with it. So if we have an issue, I think the first call is to these guys to come in and reevaluate. So, and again, I'm not impacted by stuff like that, but that's just me. I have people in my family. One is my daughter, who is extremely sensitive to all mold. However it's caused, it doesn't really matter. So, and that's just the way some people are just built. Anyway.
John, I have a question.
Yes.
Did you all inspect Leaky Restoration's work, or did you guys just come in and do the testing after? I mean, who kind of inspected the work to make sure that what they were doing, remediated all of the issues? Did you guys go behind them and inspect their work?
We were not on site when they were working, if that's what you mean. No. When they were done, so the remediation the way I look at it is the remediation was kind of done in two parts. There was a few rooms where they actually removed portions of the building. The ceiling, the walls, they actually came out. So when we came out to do our inspection, we were able to look inside these spaces and say, okay, they went far enough or not, right? And then the other parts were, there's a water stain on the ceiling, there's a water stain on the wood panel. These are just areas that needed to be, they were already dry. These are just areas that needed to be either removed or stabilized, which cleaned it and encapsulated. So you'll see a few places in the building where some of these stains were kind of painted over. That is not somebody trying to hide something. That's them just trying to stabilize a place where mold growth wasn't there, but it was a little unsightly. So they just covered it up with a microbial inhibiting paint primer to stabilize anything that might have been there, and after cleaning, and then and that's considered good enough, if there was no mold there. So I don't know if that answers your question, but we went in after they said they were done and inspected the areas they worked in to make sure that we agreed the scope of work was completed.
Okay. And then one other question, because we worked off-site, but we could kind of see some of the remediation efforts happening. There were some where the remediation company had long tubes out windows, discharging air out the windows. And then there was one office, which I noticed it looked like maybe on the last air sampling did not get tested, that they just had it blowing out an open window. And I'm just wondering what could be the issue with backdraft going back into that office, because it didn't appear on your last inspection that that one was even tested.
I don't know the exact room. If you want to give me a number, I can kind of look back and maybe give you some more specific information on that. The air sampling strategy was basically established off of that first report in 2024, and then we used the same locations going forward. That's generally how that strategy was developed. So is your concern, do you want me to explain what those hoses and all the exhaust air meant, or do you want me to speak to that one room you were concerned about?
No, I want to know what level of concern staff might have for them blowing exhaust out an open window and the window not being masked or taped off with anything backdrafting back into that office that was then again not tested.
The air that was being exhausted was cleaner than the air in the building. So if there was, I'm not going to guarantee that there was, but if there was some sort of backdraft somewhere that the air was coming back in, that's not the air to worry about. Not that there is air to worry about, but when they're doing work, they have a machine there. It's kind of sucking all the air out of the work area that they're in. It filters it through a HEPA filter and then spits it outside. So, 99.97% effective down to 0.3 microns. That's the cleanliness of the air that's being exhausted through that hose. It is way cleaner than the air that's outside in someone's car, in someone's home. It is very clean air coming out of those exhausts.
Perfect, that's what I needed, thank you.
Any other questions from staff? Anybody? Nobody? Okay. Any councils, more questions? Any comment from the public? Do they want to speak on this?
Hi, I'm Christina Britton, and I work at City Hall. So I just have a quick question. Back in 2024, our particular area was not even tested. So could you give me a little bit of information on if that area was now tested this time, and what was actually done as far as testing goes, and so I'm understanding that it's clear. You had also mentioned that there is some concern if, they start to do more work, which I think they're going to be replacing windows at some point. So is that something that we need to then be concerned about, because, they're going to be disturbing things again?
Sure. So to your first point, we did not sample every single room in the building. The strategy there being just trying to space out our samples. Again, we were kind of basing it off of the original report from 2024, and they had a strategy based on they were doing one sample per 650 square feet, I believe it was. Not generally a rule that we follow, but the idea was we were just working off the existing the work that had been done before us. So all that being said, acknowledged in our report and the report for 2024 and all of the industry guidelines and procedures, the visual inspection is more important than anything. It's really great to have that data. It's nice to have an air sample report and show it to everybody, be like, here's the numbers. We went through the entire building. So every inspection that we did, the inspection that was done in 2024, we all went through every single room and documented what was going on, and then took representative samples around the building. So if we missed your particular room, it doesn't necessarily mean that we missed, that the air quality wasn't considered in there. We just couldn't do every single room. So the visual assessment was conducted. Any observations that were made in that room were attended by the remediation contractor, and evaluate again during our kind of clearance walkthrough.
Do you know what room she is talking about, sir?
It's room, I'm looking at the map right now, it's room, 9 and 10 on the map.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. Okay. Okay. So I've got a drawing right here in front of me as well. So, yeah, so we did, we sampled, sample number 7, number 6, 15, 9, 8, they're kind of in the vicinity, but we just completely went around those rooms and didn't sample those rooms. Yeah, I mean, there's the discussion too, as you do follow-up visits, there's always the consideration, do I try new areas or do I stick with the same areas I was doing before and create either kind of a view of just how things have developed through the course of the project, or do we space those samples out? And sometimes, then we can't speak to the areas that we've already been in when actions have already been taken, right? So there's always that question of how do we use the samples that we have allotted. But again, the visual inspection is the most important part, and the air samples are meant to be just representations of their overall, it's like the air samples that we or the air samples that we use collect basically like a beach ball's worth of air. And so you're just taking these little snapshots in time, and which have a use, but it is a limited use, and it's that visual inspection by a training inspector that's the most important aspect of a survey or an assessment. The second part of your question was the window replacement, potential window replacement later on. The way that should be done, so, I don't know off the top of my head what the asbestos and lead situation is with the windows, but, the way that the window replacement should be done is that there would be engineering controls put into place to control for any sort of hazardous building material that might be there if it is there. So, lead would be like drop sheets, asbestos would be a containment around the window, negative pressure like we were just talking about with that exhaust example. So they would go through procedures to control those materials. If mold was found during that, then hopefully they could use the existing engineering controls to help control for any sort of contamination that may have come from the mold and clean it up at that point. If there wasn't any asbestos and there wasn't any lead concerns, hopefully they're still kind of keeping workers out of the immediate area as they're working in those areas, and if they do find mold during the window replacement, it's elevated to the supervisor or whoever the decision maker is, and the work procedures can be modified at that point to address the mold contamination, and then they can decide at that point whether or not something like a clearance is required or preferred, because it's technically not required. There's no regulation saying you have to do mold clearances, and a lot of the guideline documents say if you find a relatively small amount of mold, and we can discuss what that means, small amount, but if you find a small amount of mold, they don't even say clearances are recommended. They just, have someone that's trained to do remediation, go in there, clean up, and put it back together again, and then move on. But it is wise to have contingency plans in place so that if you are doing something like a window replacement project, that when the conditions change, you have procedures in place to pivot quickly and not stall the project trying to figure out what do we do now.
Joan, if I can ask for some clarification, I'm kind of a simple person to your scientific terms, but it seems to me that when you guys are doing your visual tests, that's for each individual area, because if you find something there, then you're alerted that you need to take a look at a greater picture. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
And then the air tests themselves are like a secondary precaution, basically because air conditions blowing, systems are blowing, and you want to make sure that all of the areas, if they conjoin in one area, is not going to get above a threshold that's concerning. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
So, in other words, the air control is basically like this, or the air sample is like the secondary check after your visual inspection.
For sure, yeah. It is, and I'm not trying to discount it, I'm not trying to say it's not important, it is important, but it is, if you were to say, if the inspection the proportion of the inspection that is weighted towards the visual is like 80 or 90%. That's the important part. The air samples are just, the other 10 or 20%. So they are important, but it's the visual inspection that really gets the most, is the most vital part. If you go into a building and just take air samples and then leave, these potentially leave out a whole lot of information that would be necessary to properly assess the building.
And then the second thing that I hear is, which likely was not done in the past, is that if you hire a reputable contractor who knows what they're doing, that they know how to mitigate from spreading anything dangerous inside of the building while they're doing construction.
Yeah, yes, they should, any contractor, I would hope, any experienced contractor, I would hope would have experience with dust control, proper dust control measures, and how to keep the dust from their product blowing into adjacent parts of a building where people might be living or working.
I do also want to mention that there were 2 OSHA complaints that cleared that hurdle as well, because there were complaints about some of that stuff, and they had to investigate.
So let me ask a question again. That was room 9 and 10. Is that the one that Christina and Jamie are in?
Correct, and in the final report on photo 17, it does, they took a picture of the air sampling machine in that office, and it did, and even in the report, let me go back up to the results to it, I was on the picture, I'm sorry.
That's what I'm looking to.
On room 9, state's office is what it's described as, it says passed, date was 4/1 of 26, actions no, on the final report.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did we finally answer your questions? that was a long answer. Okay, all right.
Actually, yeah, if I may, that's actually an excellent point. I'm thank you for bringing that up. I didn't realize in that last visit he did take 1 sample from room 9. Yeah.
Okay, that would have made a big difference for me right there. So I'm glad you guys did.
Okay. So if there's no more questions, we're not asking for a decision. We're just listening to the report.
There is no motion on this, no.
We already have a schedule.
Okay. So, any other questions? From the audience, staff, council? Okay. Let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a Board of Appeals and Animal Control hearing. Council will hold a public hearing to consider appeal of Jody L. Smith in response to the Animal Control Department's decision to dispose of a dangerous animal, and by motion consider resolution number 14-2026 upholding the decision of the Chief Animal Control Officer and ordering destruction of vicious animal. And with that, I will declare the public hearing to be open. Is there any information that needs to be presented to the council that wasn't already done so? Anything additional?
McKinsey. Oh, sorry.
Anything else?
Anything else?
Because I just have some questions and wanted to.
No, one moment.
Not you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry for the awkward interruptions. Before we begin and council takes any action or deliberation, first, I'm not sure if this was covered at the top of the meeting with the technical difficulties, but Mayor Parham, can you disclose whether anyone over the age or 18 years or older is in the room with you?
Are you talking to me?
Yes, there are 2 individuals that are under the age of 18.
No, in Mayor
In Mayor
Parham's
Parham's
room.
room.
Pardon
Not
me?
here, not here, in Mayor Parham's room.
Oh, in Mayor Parham's room, okay. Sorry, I'm looking at 2 kids, what's he talking about? Okay. Thank you. Okay, Mackenzie.
Was his answer no?
Say no or yes, Daryl.
Mayor, you seem to be muted.
Can you hear me now?
There we go, yes.
Okay. No, there's nobody in the immediate vicinity, just the hotel staff at the restaurant across from the business center here. And I am on a headset, so there's no,
Perfect.
yeah, there's no audio going out to the public.
Okay, so if you all don't mind, I'll give you just a brief introductory. Typically, you have a staff report that kind of walks you into the decision before you, so I will take that role if you would like. As the agenda description describes, this is a public hearing requested by the appellant, Ms. Jody Smith. The purpose of the hearing is to determine whether the facts presented support the animal control officer's determination that the subject animal was a vicious animal and that destruction is appropriate because the release of that animal would create a threat to public safety. This process is governed and established by Chapter 6.28 of your municipal code. As your staff report notes, Section 628010A provides that an animal that is engaged in an attack without provocation on another animal, which occurs off the property of the owner of the attacking animal, is rebuttably presumed vicious, meaning if the facts presented demonstrate that the subject animal engaged in that unprovoked attack, then the animal's owner has the burden of rebutting that presumption. And under Section 628030, if the Chief Animal Control Officer determines that an animal is vicious, they may order that animal destroyed if, in their opinion, release would create a threat to public safety. So you all, as the appeal hearing body, can uphold the officer's decision. That is what the staff or the resolution was drafted as, but you are absolutely free in your discretion to order the animal to be returned to its owner subject to conditions deemed reasonably necessary to ensure public safety. Based on your deliberations, I can revise the resolution in real time, so you can adopt that this evening. The formal rules of evidence aren't applicable in this administrative hearing. The council may hear and consider any evidence deemed relevant to the subject of the appeal. And your staff report and agenda have a proposed order of business for how this should be conducted. So if you have any questions on this process or Chapter 6.28 before the hearing begins, I'm happy to answer those kind of technical clarifying questions.
So I'm not sure if I'm directing, okay. Receive staff presentation and ask any clarifying questions regarding procedure and vicious animal regulations. And now we're going to receive appellant's testimony.
Yes.
So now you're on.
Okay. I am Jody Smith. I'm the owner of Gemma, which is the dog we're talking about.
My apologies, ma'am. Can you speak up because
Yeah,
I
sorry.
can barely hear you?
Is that good?
Thank you.
Okay, I am Gemma's owner, the animal we're discussing. I wasn't with Gemma that on the 5th when the dog fight took place. I don't know what exactly took place. I wasn't given any reports. However, the animal control officer showed up on the 13th at my place of business and handed me a piece of paper that states my dog has been found vicious and is up for euthanization, which Gemma is not vicious. I don't know what happened. Like I said, I wasn't with her. I don't condone any animal hurting another animal in any way or a human hurting an animal in any way. I've raised Gemma right there in the city. Well, the first year from Dunsmuir, where she had her original rabies shots, her first year shots, was in Dunsmuir at the clinic. However, I didn't get her shots. I was waiting on the clinic here on the 13th, and I had discussed that with Ryan, and it was okay. However, the fight happened on the 5th, and they showed up and took my dog. The next thing I got was a piece of paper telling me they're going to kill her. My dog is not vicious. She's been right there in the city the whole time. She has never attacked, or anything. These are my grandsons. They play with her. They sleep with her. She doesn't have any violence in her, so I don't know where this is coming from. And I kind of you know, didn't know where to turn, so I tried to talk to you, the chief of police, about one of your sergeants, and I was told you wouldn't talk to me. I tried 3 times.
You
And-
tried one time and you came the night of the last council meeting when I was here.
No.
So, yeah, it was
I
on the
went to the
12th.
police department
It was
3
on the 12th
times.
and I was here, so that's
Well,
why. you
that
can see.
might be on the 12th, but I did come 2 other times and was blocked at the door. Okay? I just wanted to touch base on, I don't feel that it's corrected. I'm not there, I don't know. I don't get a report about, I get a piece of paper that says the dog is severely injured. I don't get any pictures, I don't get no vet bills. I get nothing showing me that my dog severely hurt another dog, which I'm finding it hard to believe because Gemma's never hurt him. She's a family dog. I've had her 3.5 years, bottle fed from 4 days old. She doesn't have any violence in her, so I don't know what happened on this day. But I'm here to ask you not to let that happen. She's not vicious. I've got no reports, I've got no evidence, anything showing me my dog hurt another dog. All I've got is a death date on my dog. And who's deeming her vicious, I don't know. But these are questions I kind of need somebody to answer for me. So can anybody tell me how bad the other dog was hurt? Can somebody show me a vet bill? Can somebody show me something that proves that my dog severely hurt another animal? Because I was not there, nor was the animal control officer. And where does the vicious come from? She was taken to quarantine. 8 days into quarantine, I get a piece of paper saying she's been deemed vicious and she's gonna die. 10 days to appeal it. I appeal it, and then I've got to wait. You've had Gemma 31 days now. I haven't seen my dog. I don't even know she's okay. So, if somebody can answer some of those questions, it would be
let me interrupt for 1 second. We have a number of reports that are stating your position pretty clearly. I don't know, maybe ask the council here, do we want to listen to this stuff that we already have in place? Or in other words, there's already a statement in front of us?
Well, I just don't know why she's been held this long. I mean, she was taken for 10 days rabies, and then when 10 days is up, I'm told that she's vicious and she has to die. I don't understand any of
I
that.
thoroughly understand what you're saying, and I think all members of this council have read all of the reports. I take it, okay.
Mackenzie, I think the outstanding question is, do we need to receive officer testimony, or can we take the reports as the officer's testimony?
I've never even seen a report.
I'm sorry,
I would
I was
actually ask, my question is, she has made the same statement at least 10 times. To make her stand here and repeat herself seems to be painful. So what I like to do is, can we just take her statements as her statements on paper and her statements that she's given right now as her position?
I got you.
And then she can get rebuttal after the officer reports. Is that okay with you?
That's fine. I just would like to keep in mind I've never even been given any report about what happened or prior reports or anything on my dog. So I can't really testify to anything that's hearsay because I have no proof.
Well, I'm looking at a number of letters that you wrote.
Oh,
Okay.
okay, I understand that, yes.
Okay, so what I'm saying is most of those letters are fairly consistent. So what I'd like to do is not make you go through any more pain, and then we can talk with the officer involved and get his statement.
That would be fine.
All right, so if you'll sit, then we'll have the officer.
Thank you.
Receive the chief animal officer's testimony.
Hello. My name is Ryan Coates. I am Community Service Officer for the Wheat Police Department. My duties also include animal control. I will be referring to the investigation portion of my narratives.
Hold on a second. Is there a way to turn that fan off?
It's the
The rain.
Oh, is that the rain?
Yeah.
Jeez. We should have done a better job of building this one too. Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Speak up a little louder then.
All right. Can you hear me? All right.
It's
So
a really struggle around here. Is I'm the only one? Shut up.
So I will be referring to the investigation portion of each of my narrative and supplements. Keep in mind that these were taken over numerous days. They weren't all written on the same time. So as new information comes, it's included. On Thursday, 03/05/2026, I arrived at an empty property behind Dollar General, 185 Bull Street, for a report of a dogfight. I observed the reporting party, Corolla Henriquez, with their German Shepherd, Nakia. Nakia was observed to be on leash, dressed with a pink sweatshirt that was obviously bloodied. I contacted Henriquez. I took photos of the wounds I could see. Nakia had a torn ear and what appeared to be a puncture in the right paunch. I asked if Henriquez had been injured. Henriquez stated no. I asked Henriquez what had happened. Henriquez's accounting of the events are as follows. Henriquez was on the private property behind 185 Bull Street due to not having anywhere to take her dog and wanting a place with no dogs around. Henriquez wanted Nakia to be focused, indicating to a red dog toy in her hand when, in quotes, when she plays with this. This other dog, later identified as Gemma, came out of nowhere and attacked Nakia. She ran up to Nakia and tried to kick this other dog off hers. Nakia was down and trying to free herself. Nakia was observed to be tan and brown. Sorry, I missed my place. This is Henriquez described this other dog as a larger female mixed breed dog with brown and tan fur, similar in color to Nakia, which was observed to be tan and brown. An older man showed up 3 or 4 minutes later. Henriquez stated the police needed to be called. The man, later identified as Brian O'Sullivan, stated no, please. Henriquez stated that the man had stated the dog was not his and belonged to a woman named Jody, later identified as Smith, who owns a store next to Hilo Cafe. The male then took the other dog back to the street. I had prior knowledge of a dog matching the description belonging to Jody Leanne Smith. I had a pre-existing incident dated 01/22/2026 where the dog was reported at large at Solanos, 700 Shastina Drive. Employees were unable to enter one of the work vehicles because Gemma was there and had growled at an employee. The dog was not safely approachable as she growled at me when I tried to secure her, and I had to use a Weed Police Department catch pole to secure the dog safely. The dog was impounded, but then returned to Smith with the promise that Gemma would be rabies vaccinated, microchipped, and would get a dog license with the City of Weed. I issued a 10-day dog letter for licensing at the same time. I had later issued Smith administrative citation Adam 1606 for violation of that same letter on 02/05/2026. Refer to case number 26-1047 for more. Henriquez had advised that she and her son were new to town as of October of last year. I asked Henriquez if they had a current rabies vaccination and dog license. Henriquez advised they did have a current rabies vaccination, but they had yet to get a dog license. I advised them to remedy that as soon as possible. I needed to see the rabies paperwork. Henriquez advised they would bring me the paperwork to the Weed Police Department. I asked Henriquez if the dog had been unleashed and the dogs had fought. Henriquez stated they had the dog unleashed during the fight. Henriquez would be seeking veterinary care as soon as possible and agreed to send their paperwork to Weed Police Department as well. I advised Henriquez that due to the circumstances of the fight, Nakia would have to be quarantined for 10 days at home. At 13:16 hours, I arrived at 118 Southwood Boulevard, where I knew Smith to have a business. Sergeant Clomparents had arrived ahead of me and was engaged in conversation with Smith. Sergeant Clomparents asked if Gemma was friendly. Smith stated Gemma was very friendly, but when it came to other dogs, quote, I don't know what it is. She gets along with other females, usually, but not the males. End quote. Smith proceeded to say she had only experience with Gemma around other dogs twice. Smith stated she had told, quote, him, O'Sullivan, before he had left to not let Gemma get loose, that I will lose her and you will have to chase her. Smith was explaining that Gemma had been involved in a dogfight that resulted in injury of the other party's dog, Nakia. Smith stated Gemma had cuts on her legs too. I advised Smith that Gemma would need to be seized for 10-day quarantine due to having no current record of rabies vaccination. Smith stated that Gemma had gotten off her leash, which was witnessed by Sergeant Plum Parents, who was en route to an unrelated call earlier and had driven by at that time. And this other woman, Henriquez, was also off leash. It was explained to Smith that those circumstances did not prevent the necessity for quarantine. Smith presented Gemma for me to take possession of. I observed 2 spots of blood on Gemma's fur. I took photos. I did not observe any obvious marks or injuries on the dog. I asked Smith who they had given possession of her dog to. Smith stated it was Brian, who was later to be known as O'Sullivan, but did not know the last name and did not have a current contact for him. I advised Smith they need to get in touch with the man to have him contact us to get a statement for this case. I then took possession of Gemma and booked her into Weed Police Department Pound for 10-day quarantine. Due to my previous incident with this dog, the owner's inability to provide required care in the form of vaccinations, the lack of control of the dog on the property, and the results of the dog fight, I believe Gemma to be a hazard to the community and vicious per 6.18.010 Parent A, Weed Municipal Code, vicious animal defined, but more investigation was required. At 16:00 hours, Matthew DeGrazi and Henriquez arrived at Weed Police Department to contact me. They provided proof of current rabies. I asked if Nakia was still at the vet. They advised that Nakia was taken to Alpine Vet, 210 Main Street, and they were given an appointment for the next day to go in for stitches. Henriquez talked more about the attack on Nakia, stating that Gemma was on top of Nakia when the man O'Sullivan had tried to lift Gemma off Nakia. Gemma would not release her from her mouth. Henriquez and DeGrazi advised they were concerned about the dog's release given what had happened with their dog. I advised Henriquez and DeGrazi the process of a seizure for vicious dog and that the owner Smith would have the opportunity to appeal the decision and go to a hearing. I asked if Henriquez would be willing to testify in support of Gemma being euthanized for 6.28.04 Parent C, Weed Municipal Code. Henriquez stated they would. I gave Henriquez a voluntary statement form to fill out and return, which should be provided with paperwork. Supplement 1. On 030926, I observed that Corolla Henriquez had turned in a filled out voluntary statement form. The summary of Henriquez's statement is as follows. Henriquez was walking their dog Nakia on leash behind Dollar General when a brown female dog appeared from the direction of the roadway and attacked her dog. Henriquez tried their best to get Nakia away from the dog for 3 or 4 minutes, screaming for the owner of this dog to help due to the dog not letting Nakia go. An old man, O'Sullivan, arrived and screamed for his dog to stop. The man struggled to remove the dog from on top of Nakia. Henriquez had asked for the dog's name, and the man stated he was not the owner. Henriquez asked who the owner was. The man stated Jody, who owned a business next to High-Low Cafe. The dog was still actively trying to attack Nakia, so Henriquez asked the man to go away. Henriquez stated they would be calling the police because of the injuries done to Nakia. The man had asked her not to. Henriquez proceeded to call 911 and told the man to go away. The police department had then arrived. At 15:51 hours, I observed that Brian O'Sullivan had arrived at Weed Police Department at approximately 8:19 or 1900 hours on 03/05/2026 to deliver a statement. A voluntary statement form had not been completed. I contacted O'Sullivan by telephone. The summary of his statement is as follows. O'Sullivan had gone by Jody Smith to walk Gemma because she's a nice dog. Smith agreed to allow O'Sullivan to walk the dog. O'Sullivan started walking up the driveway when Gemma slipped the collar by backing up and pulling her head out of the collar. O'Sullivan chased after the dog, which was witnessed by Sergeant Klumparent, as was originally stated in the previous narrative. By the time O'Sullivan had reached the weed store, 158 Southwood Boulevard, Gemma had ran across the dirt parking lot across the street to Bulls. O'Sullivan stated he had chased after her to the creek just past the north side of the empty lot. That should actually be the south side because that is where the creek is located. O'Sullivan stated he could see a woman, Henriquez, playing fetch with her dog up the hill. O'Sullivan was concerned because Gemma can be ... I don't want to say aggressive, but she doesn't bullshit with other animals. Excuse my language. The two dogs look at one another. Nakia came towards Gemma and, quote, Gemma was like, "Come on, let's get it," end quote. They fought for 35 seconds before the woman started screaming, my dog, O'Sullivan stated to pick up the dog, but Nakia wasn't on a leash and the woman couldn't do it, so O'Sullivan jumped on top of Gemma, and that was the end of it. It seemed like the only injury that had resulted of this fight was to Nakia's ear. End of that statement. I advised O'Sullivan that the injuries were more than just the torn ear. I asked O'Sullivan if he could come in to do a voluntary statement form. O'Sullivan agreed to come in the next couple of days to complete that. I ended the contact with O'Sullivan. I recontacted Henriquez by telephone. I asked Henriquez if she was playing fetch with her dog prior to the attack. Henriquez stated the leash was always attached to the dog and they were playing fetch prior to Gemma's arrival. Henriquez stated during the time of the attack, Henriquez had control of the leash. Henriquez stated that there was no way O'Sullivan would have been able to see if she had the leash or not with how far away he was. I ended contact with Henriquez. At 16:40, I re-examined Gemma for wounds. I found evidence of a scrape that corresponded with a blood mark found on Gemma on 03/05/2026. I took photos of her legs. Supplement 2. On Thursday, 03/12/2026, at approximately 15:41 hours, I was in full uniform at Wood Police Department with Carola Henriquez, who had arrived at the lobby and contacted me. Henriquez provided me with Alpine veterinary bills from injuries inflicted onto her dog, Nakia, from the dog fight on 03/05/2026. The total cost was $432.27. I did not see medical examination paperwork for Nakia's injuries. Henriquez agreed to meet me at Alpine Vet, 210 Main Street to procure the paperwork. I arrived at the location in a marked community service vehicle. Henriquez and I contacted Alpine Vet veterinary staff who provided the medical paperwork. The injury summary for Nakia was a 1 centimeter deep cut through all the skin layers on her front leg, puncture wounds on the side of her rear leg, a puncture wound on her head, and small cuts on her ear. The dog also presented with a limp. The summary recommended doing a surgical closure of the leg and requiring swelling that was affecting the chest area. At 15:56 hours, at further investigation, I believed Gemma to be vicious per 6.20.010, parent A, we'd miscode. Due to the circumstances of the fight, the injuries sustained the previous experience, personal experience, the continued non-compliance leading up to the dog fight, and the lack of adequate means to prevent future incidents. For example, no fenced yard on the property, the difficulty of controlling Gemma, a public nuisance that is maintained despite reprieve, a building without running water due to non-payment, which could affect the care of the dog. I believe this dog to be a threat and a hazard to the residents of the residents and property of the city of Weed, where the only reasonable remedy would be for the dog to be euthanized. I completed a notice of animal seizure per 6.28.020. We miscode with the intent to euthanize on 03/23/2026. I arrived to 118 Main Street in my marked community service vehicle. I contacted Jody Smith and delivered the notice. I advised Smith that they had the opportunity to appeal the decision and that the notice explained the process. Supplement 3. On Monday, 03/16/2026, I observed a written statement by Brian O'Sullivan, dated 03/13/2026, was dropped off to Weed Police Department. The summary of that statement is as follows. On 03/05/2026, O'Sullivan was walking Gemma when the leash slipped off his wrist while he was pulling up his pants. Gemma ran to the creek. O'Sullivan ran after her, and as he approached, he saw a dog running towards Gemma, and they started fighting. O'Sullivan grabbed Gemma's leash and pulled her, and as he pulled Gemma back, he may have caused Gemma to rip the other dog. The other dog was not on leash. O'Sullivan then picked up Gemma, and the owner of the other grabbed her dog, and they went their separate ways. Neither dog was more vicious than the other. End of statement. This didn't match statements made over the phone from previous phone conversation with O'Sullivan. I knew the dog was seen passing the weed store 158 Southwood Boulevard, and they had cameras that they may have caught the dog at large leading up to the dog fight incident on 03/05/2026. I contacted the store by telephone and was advised by staff that the camera had not been able to see the incident. I was advised by staff member Kevin Taylor that he had been working that day, the day of the incident, and he had remembered seeing a dog loose and a person chasing the dog. Taylor agreed to filling out a voluntary statement form. At 13:10 hours, I arrived at the weed store in full uniform driving a marked community service vehicle. I contacted Taylor and they filled out the voluntary statement form. The summary of that statement is as follows. On 03/05/2026, Taylor saw a small lighter colored dog run past the front of the store and turn the corner of the south side of the building. Taylor believed the dog to be a border collie golden retriever mix with shorter hair. The front of the store has windows that show the entire west side of the property and sidewalk. After the dog turned the corner, Taylor looked in the opposite direction, saw an older man in his 40s to 50s trying to catch up to the dog. He was out of breath and holding a leash. There was the weed store's property length distance between the two at this time, and the dog running at a much faster speed than the man. The man then ran around the corner and was out of sight. Taylor returned to helping customers in the store. This event was completed in less than 30 seconds. Taylor notes that a lot of dogs run at large in the area, so he regularly looks for an owner when he sees one. What stood out to Taylor in this case was that the man was out of breath running after his dog, and Taylor felt bad for the man. Taylor assumed the man was the owner since he was holding a leash. Supplement 4. On Wednesday, 03/19/2026, at approximately 11:20 hours, I arrived at Solano's, 700 Shastina Drive, in full uniform and driving a marked community service vehicle. I contacted Matthew Martin as the person who first saw and had interaction with Gemma when she was reported a dog at large at the same address on 01/22/2026. I asked if Martin would be willing to complete a voluntary statement form with what he had witnessed on that day in terms of the events and the dog's behavior. Martin agreed. I gave him a form to complete. Martin then had to leave and would call when the form was completed. At 15:32 hours, I arrived back at the same location. I contacted Martin, who had completed the voluntary statement form. Some of the statements on the form were vague, and I asked if Martin would be willing to expand on them, such as the distance of the interaction with the dog, and if there was specific signals giving off from the dog to indicate temperament. Martin agreed. The summary of Martin's statement is as follows. On 01/22/2026, Martin observed a dog in Solano's yard acting spooked and somewhat aggressive. The dog was hiding behind the shed and proceeding to lie under a box truck. The dog had its ears back, tail between its legs, and it barked like it was afraid from approximately 100 feet away. This made Martin feel like the dog did not want to be approached. CSO Coates arrived and went behind the truck to capture the dog. I can only see his legs and feet. Martin did not see CSO Coates again until he had caught the dog and walked the dog to the car. The dog was caught with a catch pole. I took possession of the form and ended my contact. And that is the end of my supplements. I am sorry for how long that was.
Excuse me. You can have a seat and we'll receive a rebuttal from the appellant. Actually, let's make a step backwards. We can receive any comment from public first, if there's anything that somebody else wants to say. Name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Dave Manning. I live at 371 Phelps. I just want to say that I've been around Gemma for quite some time, and I thought, what dog fight isn't vicious? I haven't seen one that hasn't been. As far as how the statements go, you got two sides of the story. Of course, the gentleman that was walking the dog, and that's the area where people go to take their dog off the leash. So if she was playing fetch, that other dog was just as free as Gemma was. So I'm not saying it was right that would happen, but I figured vicious would be like something that they would attack without warning anything against people. She's not vicious against people. She's a guard dog. She's not around a lot of people, but she's never attacked a human being whatsoever. A growl, that's kind of vague to qualify euthanization for a dog fight. So anyway, I hope everybody comes to agreement here. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else with a comment?
There was,
So I've been hearing some complaints about the Gemma incident and the other dog incident. I wanted to say that the other dog wasn't on a leash, and Gemma was on one. I have not seen Gemma for 2 months, but I have been around her for 3 years. Yeah, I really want to know what's been going on, and I do not want to see her dead.
Thank you.
Council, there was one letter received
Okay, now,
by the
pardon
public.
me?
There was one letter received by the public as well, which was distributed to council via email.
I received, and I think the rest of the council received a letter from Brendan Butler.
Correct.
Right. Pretty much stating the same thing, that he has not seen any aggressive behavior by Jenna the dog. Jenna. Did everybody else read that letter? Okay. So after the public comment, we have a rebuttal by the appellant, which is you, Jody. No. If you want to make a comment, you'll have to speak before Jody does.
And I'm actually, I think the best way to do this is just work backwards. And in the damages situation, when, as far as the law is set up, if another person's animal damages your animal, they're exclusively responsible for that. The negligence factor in this community of people walking their dogs off the leash is a thing I deal with daily. It's not anything new. There's several trails and things that I try to utilize to stay away from the off-leash dogs, because I've actually been attacked 3 times and put in the hospital another time in these same situations where my dog's on a leash and I'm in public walking and somebody else's dog comes up and puts me in a situation where I can't even usually defend myself. I would say the fact that the other party seems to consistently be trying to evade their accountability in that their foresight in what can happen and potential of owning anything, a car, a firearm, a dog, any of those types of situations. There's foreseeable things that you need to do to prevent outcomes that are not good. And so in these types of situations, what clearly needs to be happening is the city doesn't have a leash law. A leash law would clarify what is expected of a citizen. That way, it empowers your officers to direct them to either use appropriate leashes, appropriate quarantine measures, appropriate, whatever it is, recommendations. It also gives them a tool to hold the people accountable for follow-ups. And in this situation, I put in for the police reports, but it appears the supplementals are just getting done and all that. And after listening to them, the discrepancies and that one fact of trying to evade accountability is concerning, because that is the trend with every person that does this type of thing. And nobody expects, oh yeah, my dog's not vicious and all those types of things. But, I mean, things happen, accident happens. You know, a DUI, you have a couple beers, you get in, that's bad judgment. If you don't know to take a breathalyzer test and you get in a car accident, I mean, there's no bad intention there, but you're responsible for it. And financially, it put us in a little bit of a hardship, and that's, you know, that always can be resolved in small claims courts, things like that, but I would hope to expect that other citizens in the community would just be forestanding and pay their dues when damages are done. Aside from that, I would like the city council to maybe set up a future date that a leash law can be discussed, some more implementation of where dogs are allowed and where dogs are not allowed. That way we can clarify stuff, because there's just not a lot of area here. And then when you have loose people with their dogs, you're just cornered, you know. And a lot of the times I like to run with my dog, so if I'm jogging and running, I have headphones on, you just get like attacked from the side of just some animal, you know. So I think I said what I need to say. And of course, nobody wants to see their dog end up in these circumstances, but you know, accountability is something you learn in a lot of things in life, and in skydiving, you learn accountability in a much more detrimental outcome. So in those types of standards where there is some type of repercussions for your choices, that's usually what generates people stopping from doing these types of things. I appreciate your time, and if you have any questions you'd like me to clarify.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Any questions? Okay, Jody?
Okay, so I have to go back to Ryan stating that he was called to Solano's for a dog that seemed to be vicious. In fact, I had gotten in touch with the police department 3 times that week. Gemma had never been missing before, and she had been missing 3 days. I was so worried. I contacted them every day. I probably drove them nuts. So when he states that he was called on a vicious dog, he was already searching for the dog because I had alerted him she had been gone 3 days. When I did go pick her up at the police department, I signed the paperwork for her rabies vaccinations and all that. When I got her home, 2 days later, my son was airlifted. He was in liver failure and taken to SAC. So I was in SAC for like 5 to 8 days there on a family emergency with my son. When I got back, I did call and tell them I wasn't trying to not take care of everything, and that Gemma would be at the clinic on the 13th in Wairika, which Ryan stated that would be fine. So 2 days later, I get an administrative citation for $100 because she hadn't got to the clinic yet. So I'm not trying to say that I would take responsibility. I would pay the vet bill. I don't condone any animal being hurt, as I said, but I wasn't given that opportunity. I wasn't given any opportunity to even know who the other dog was, who the owners were, to even help them. So, you know, I would have taken that responsibility, and I do agree with release law and people taking responsibility for their pets. I was trying to do everything I could. So, I would just like to ask the city to please return Gemma. It's been 30-something days, and I don't even know how she is. And that's pretty much all I have to ask of you. Thank you.
I have some questions for the officers. What has the dog's demeanor been like in quarantine?
The dog's demeanor is pretty regular for the dog. It barks when there's the presence of others. It barks in the presence of other dogs. Sometimes it's like excited because it's excited to see me. I've had another officer come out and the dog was perceived as being aggressive towards them and the dog they were bringing out to the pound. I can handle the dog. I don't feel fear that the dog is going to bite me at this time, but whenever I do take that dog on walks, it very much has an obvious prey drive, meaning like anything that moves out there, it has its attention, and it's really hard to break that attention away, which could be potentially somebody else's animal, unfortunately.
And what breed is the dog?
But Jody says boxer and ridgeback, which feels like a good description for that dog.
Were there any other bites on the victim dog, either at the neck or at the gut area?
One more time.
Were there any injuries to the victim dog, to the neck, or to the gut area?
Oh, I wasn't looking at you. One of the owners is here. So, based off, I just have what's in my report. There should have been a medical examination report as well. The only issues that seem to be to the torso is that swelling in the chest that kept coming back. Otherwise, it was mostly to the head and the haunch, and that serious wound to the front leg.
When you first went out to the area behind Dollar General and you were able to observe this situation, did it appear that there was a leash that would have allowed somebody to play fetch with their dog while the dog was on the leash?
Negative.
So, based on your circumstances and conclusion, it seems like this dog was off leash.
I can only go based off what was told to me, because again, we don't have a full, we have only what they have said, which was they were there to play fetch, but during the time in which, because they're also going on a walk, that during the time of this conflict, that the dog was under control of the leash.
And the dog hasn't attempted to bite or attack anyone while in the 30 days it's been in the custody of the city of Leaf.
It's not put in a situation where it would be capable of. It stays in its kennel, and then it's only out in the larger yard when there are no other dogs present in that yard.
So are you the only one that can be with that dog to take him for walks around in that? Because I know what you're talking about. In that area where the kennels are at, can you let that dog go and she's good?
So I can let the dog go in the general area. I haven't brought anybody else out to try to interact just because of the possible risk.
Now, while there's other dogs that have been in the pen, does she go for them if they're communicating back and forth with each other?
There seems to be very minimal interaction. Like generally they go and do their own thing. Not confirmed, but it appears that the dog might also not be spayed. Is that true?
That was going to be my question. Is the dog spayed?
Is the dog spayed?
She's not spayed. I don't have a problem getting her spayed, and I don't have a problem paying the vet bill. I just haven't been given the option to do any of that, which if she needs to be spayed, I will take care of it, yes.
Well, I have a question though. It seems though your dog gets away from you a lot. I mean, it's out running around at large.
No, I'm sorry, sir, every now and then she gets.
I'm listening, I'm a dog lover. I'm telling you, from what I'm reading or hearing on the reports and what I've read, they've had a lot of communication or interaction with that dog.
No, so see, Gemma was, in her first year, she was out on my house before I moved here, where she roamed the hill. There was never a need for a chain or anything, and I could yell and she would come back. Since we moved to the city, I put her on one of those runs. Right. She's only allowed to go so far. So when somebody comes in and she's not on the leash, they don't watch for her to get out. She gets out, and I'm right behind her, and I chase her. She just runs. She's just running to be running because she's on the chain now. She's not running to hurt anybody or attack any other animals.
Which she did. Unfortunately, it happened, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but I have to look at both sides, and this is a decision that's going to be a tough one for me to make either way. But how many times were you asked to get a rabies shot in a city like this?
Just the once when she was missing, and I had to go get her from the police department. And like I said, was waiting for the clinic. I had no problem doing it. I was waiting for the clinic. But on the 5th, the fight happened, so there was no 13th to get the shots. But I did ask animal control to meet me there or release her so I could get her shots while she was in quarantine, and I was denied. So, I did try to take proper steps. I went a little further.
Okay, I'm a little confused on the rabies. So you're saying that when did the officer ask you to get rabies?
When he located her, she had been missing 3 days. When he located her, I went to the police department and met him, and he made me sign the paperwork.
Okay.
On the 4th or 5th day of her being home, my son was airlifted out, so like on the 9th or 10th day, I tried to call the vets, and I found out the clinic was on the 13th. So I was 3 days away from the 13th, or the 5th, or however that went down. It was on the 5th the fight happened, and the shots weren't till the 13th, but we had the agreement that I would take her on the 13th and get it done.
Okay.
So I did check in and make sure he knew what my plan was with her, and he agreed.
How old is she?
Gemma's 3.
And you've never had a rabies shot for her?
Yes, her first year she had her shots in Dunsmuir, through the clinic in Dunsmuir. And I did try to get a hold of Tony and get records of that too, but I didn't have any luck because I was gone that first week. So she has had her first year shots, yes, but she is, as they say, she needs her current shots yearly, so she doesn't have them. So yeah.
Council, I'll just add that we're tasked with registering dogs for the specific purpose of rabies. That's why the state tasks us with that.
Right.
So.
And her 10 days quarantine, did she have rabies?
No. But that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, I did try.
But it's not a good thing if she does contact rabies. If she's out, any dog out at large, and gets a squirrel or anything else, that's the potential of it. The reason you get rabies is so you protect yourself and yourself, your grandkids, and the general public from it. So I have 2 dogs, and my dogs have all their shots. That's like part of the ritual of having a dog.
Right. Well, I did try, she got in a fight. I did try to have him meet me or on the 13th, so I could have him done while she was still in quarantine, and she would have had to go back to quarantine, but at least it would have been done. But I was denied that too. So, the next clinic is on the 25th. If I need to get them before then, I will get them before then. But I was told the next clinic was on the 25th, so I don't know what the city wants me to do, but I will do what I need to do to get her home. And to protect other animals, and protect other animals from getting rabies or any kind of, it's not like I'm not trying to do that, because I am, and I did try while she was in quarantine.
I'm just asking you.
Yes,
and I'm just giving an opinion of my own personal, as a dog owner.
I understand that. I live under my business, right in the middle of the weed, right next to High-Low.
I know.
And my neighbor is Brennan. Brennan is right there next door to me, so he sees her every day on a daily
Right.
basis. So that's all I wanted to point out. But, you know, if I could take her home right now and take her to her vet, get her shots or what she needs, I would do that. But I haven't seen Gemma in 30-something days, and I
But Jody, I think what the issue is, the rabies shot and getting her vaccinated is one thing. The bigger problem is she going to do this again?
I don't know what happened that afternoon, and
Is she going to be
she
running at
doesn't-
large?
We have 2 other dogs that she's with all the time, okay? One of them is a bull mastiff and a pit bull, which the demeanor on that dog is but there's no fighting. She doesn't attack them. She doesn't fight with them. My son has 2 dogs. She doesn't fight with them. She doesn't harm children. She doesn't harm adults. I'm just not understanding why we want to jump straight to euthanization for a dog that's been in a dog fight. It's not like I condone the animals hurting each other, but come on, there's got to be other things first before euthanization. I'm sorry. For a dog that's been in one dog fight. And I don't condone the dog fight, and I tried to make right. I tried to find out if the dog was hurt and everything. I was denied all that information, so I don't know what I could do, you know?
Council, I'd say we're partially here because the animal control officer's at a loss for any type of condition or stipulation on returning that dog. We can't say have an enclosure because there's no yard. So he's coming before you for help because he's a dog lover himself. I've seen him with multiple dogs. He does not want to euthanize any dog if he doesn't have to, but the point being here is he was at a loss with what was presented. He only had one viable option based on the 2 incidents, the citation issued on February 5th,
Right.
the lack of response between January to March 5th when the second incident happened. So that's partially why we're here, is because he couldn't come up with some sort of solution here.
So let me have a little clarity from Ryan, because between all the rain and intermittent that's been coming down and my lack of hearing quality, you had 2 incidents, okay? On both of those incidents was the dog Jenna unleashed.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, because we have an officer that did observe the dog at large and multiple witnesses that observed the dog at large in March,
Okay.
as well as her being present at Solano's without an owner.
Okay, so all the time unleashed at this point.
So that's running at large.
Okay, so running at large, okay. When we had the fight of the 2 animals together, were both dogs unleashed or just Jenna? I just want to ask the officer. Thanks, Jody.
Right, based off statements, because I was not present for it.
I don't know.
Sorry, what?
What did they tell you? Were both dogs unleashed or no?
So, I was told, one says that both were unleashed, one says that one was leashed and one was not. And then the one that wasn't leashed was Jonah.
Okay.
Can I ask clarification of that? Wasn't the first statement that she was playing with the dog with the toy, and then she changes her statement and says she was walking the dog on the leash?
She was very adamant that during the time of the attack, I can only go based off the statement. I did try to question her a second time about it, and she was very adamant that she had the dog on leash in her possession when the dog attack happened.
I guess I'm asking clarification for the first part of your police report, where you indicate she shows you the toy and says, I was trying to play with my dog. That was the witness's statement, right?
Yes, that's.
And then subsequently, you try to clarify her statement, and she says that the dog was on the leash.
So the first statement was right after the incident. She recounting it. The second statement is her written statement.
Okay. So after she incurred the vet bill, suddenly the dog was on the leash.
That was prior to the vet bill.
Okay.
And so there was an original, so you had the question about the stay. and that will also alter a dog's temperament as well, especially if they're during their breeding season.
Which is now.
Yeah.
So we have conflicting statements on leash. We have conflicting statements with toy. We don't have a yard. There's no way to fence this dog in. Is that what I'm getting?
Yes.
Okay.
So basically we have one dog and an owner that went to an area with intention. We have one dog that inserted itself into a situation that then resulted in over $400 of damages.
I completely understand. I have 3 dogs. They got a fence, and I got to mend it all the time.
And I don't know what would be reasonable to request to ensure that this won't happen again, given what has already happened.
Officer, I understand that you are limited under our ordinance. You have give the dog back, you have destroy the dog. There's no in between. I also understand you don't have the power to tell a dog owner you shall create a kennel of where the dog is housed, correct?
The specific code states that we can agree on limitations placed on the dog, but I don't know what could be humanely requested at this time.
Is the dog humanely housed right now with the city of Reed?
Without having been inside the house, I can't say yes or no. All I know is that.
No, I mean,
At our
when
yard.
the dog's been at our yard, has it been humanely quarantined?
Yeah.
And it hasn't slipped whatever enclosure we have it in?
Negative.
So if we mandated the owner to create something, the equivalent with your approval, then there is a possibility this dog could be contained safely.
Yes.
Does she, on her current residence, is there enough space? And that's a great statement, but I heard nothing. So, if you could step forward, please. That's okay.
Okay, so I am currently getting ready to move to a ranch out in Lake Chastina, which Gemma would be fenced in out there. You know, she wouldn't be in the city and she would have her own run out there at the territory. So I don't think you'd have a problem ever again with her, but I just wanted to do this because she's not vicious, you know, not on the I'm moving thing. So, but since you brought the fence thing up, yes, I am currently getting ready to move.
And currently getting ready, what does that translate to?
I'm busy packing.
Huh?
I'm busy packing,
Okay.
but I do have the store, and the store will be shut down within the next 30 days was the plan.
So the property in Lake Shastina, do you have a lease agreement on it, a purchase agreement?
I'm actually told him the other day I wanted the place, so I'm gonna have to go fill out the paperwork for him, but it's being held for me, yes.
So let me go back to the other question. Is there room on your current property that if you were told we would spare this dog, but you absolutely must build this kennel?
Oh, I would do whatever I had to for my dog. She's not just a dog, she's my girl, she's my family. I would do whatever I had to.
Okay, let me try the question again.
Okay.
Is there sufficient space on your property to build?
There is, yeah. If need be, yes. It's just all cement area, so that's kind of
Are you following? I mean, what I'm saying, do you understand? You need to build something for that dog, or
Yes, I would.
in time you need to move.
Yes, no, that's,
I
I
mean,
would.
now you don't have to move. I mean, if you're saying you're going to move,
I would do whatever I was inclined to do to keep her safe and what had to be done.
Do we have an administrative cost for holding the dog?
The paperwork says fees were waived.
Could you say that again?
Fees were waived per municipal code due to the hearing process.
Okay, so everything is waived right now.
But do we have a daily amount?
What would you charge if this wasn't a hearing process and you were just holding the dog?
So if it was just holding the dog, it would be $5 a day.
It's gotta be more than $5 to take care of a dog.
It is, but that's what currently is at.
We've asked for that to be evaluated in the past.
To have a bowl of food.
Council, and I'll defer to our city attorney on this, but I believe under the Food and Ag Code, having a hearing process set up, this establishes the right to deem a dog potentially dangerous, correct? Not vicious, and with that would come stipulations that would allow the release of the dog and carry, I believe, a $500 fine. But again, I'll defer to Mackenzie on that one.
Well, the distinction here is that the Food and Agriculture Code is a default under state law, but our code can supersede it. So because the city has chosen to adopt its own regulations, those are separate. We're governed by the confines of Chapter 6.28 on this matter. And to that point, what you've noted about the fees, 6.28070 says no fee shall be charged for the impoundment of an animal under that section. If she was impounded for quarantine or some other reason under a separate provision, then you could recover the fees for that impoundment, but you're correct that your code does say that these fees would be waived for impounding pending a vicious dog determination.
Well, with that, I want to close the public hearing right now so you folks can all sit down, Ryan and Jody. Except for our discussion on what we want to do. I really have a hard time destroying an animal, especially with dog to dog. Dog and human might be a little bit different for me, but
Well, I do too.
I just don't know.
Oh, I have a list.
You could do a small kennel, but that's not all you can do on the property for right now. And if she doesn't move, then we're kind of stuck with that decision.
So where I'm at is, I agree, I have a problem of destroying an animal for an animal-on-animal attack, and I'm not saying that I'm a guru with animals, but I can say that I have tried a fair number of dog mauling cases. I find it interesting that the dog did not attack in the areas that you would normally attack a dog if you were a vicious dog attempting to destroy prey. I think it is indicative of the fact that the dog is likely in heat given the time of year it is, that it is an area that that dog is familiar with and may claim its own territory. I have issue with the fact that the dog has been kept for 30 days in our custody and doesn't appear to be vicious towards any individual. I mean, a scared dog growling at someone is a little bit different than a dog lunging at a human being. I think the problem is, and I think Mark points this out, is when you take on a dog, you have certain responsibilities. And rabies is one of those that is almost a no-brainer. And you know, you've got your grandbabies here, and they should learn very quickly that there are just certain responsibilities that you have. And you knew, obviously, from getting the first year, as a pet owner, I know that my adult dogs, I have to do it every 3 years. I get a choice between a 1-year or a 3-year rabies. I think it also comes with, you have to be able to confine your animal. And I have 2 dogs at home. I have one dog that is inclined just like yours, used to dash out the door as soon as it was open. And I had to get it under control, and I had to get it in check. And that meant I had to get professional help to make sure that it wasn't going to happen. It was a pretty penny, but it was my responsibility to the community to make sure that that happened. With that being said, in listening to her talk, I think requiring certain confinement of the dog, I'm not sure why this dog continues to get out. I think that the dog probably needs to be spayed. If it was a male dog, it wouldn't even be a question in my mind that they would have to be neutered. I think that if the dog is going to be walked, it's got to be on a harness, not on a regular collar, so that it can't slip the harness. I actually have written here that perhaps they may have to walk the dog with a muzzle, because I'm concerned about if they do slip. I think you need approved fencing or enclosure. You have to maintain your rabies. You'd have to maintain your license fees, pay the administrative citation, and I would say that you're going to have to pay fees until you can get an enclosure appropriate so that you can take your dog home. Well, and that's the answer, is we're making an exception, and so, well, you have to understand, we read the law, and the law presumes that what your dog did is a vicious animal. And I understand, because I would not call my dog vicious, but I know under this law, if my dog did it, it's a vicious animal under the law, and it would break my heart to call my dog that. But those are all the things I would propose to City Council that are floating around in my mind, or some variation of them, or whatever, but that's kind of my feelings.
I think there's one other point, is whatever decision that we do make up here pushes liability back to the city. So if we release an animal that is potentially vicious, and we have let it go, that puts us at risk. So that's kind of, I'm in a lot of agreement with what Melissa says, because I don't think our city wants to take on that exposure, and I, as a representative of the city, would not want to actually push us that direction. So I think what we need to do is, who would be the most appropriate person to come up with some conditions based on what Melissa has said? What kind of conditions could we present to make sure the dog is safe?
You've offered some potential there. I think that you would just vote to all agree upon it, a majority agree upon it, and then that would be part of the amendment to the resolution that Mackenzie would then draft up live. Some potential solutions have been presented. You would have to a majority of you would need to agree upon those conditions, and then, as Mackenzie stated earlier, she could then live update the resolution as it's per your stipulations.
Mackenzie, can I ask for clarification? If we were to pass this with stipulations like we're talking about, and Ms. Smith was to move to Lake Shastina, we only have control within the confines of the city of Weed, correct?
That's correct.
And so if she didn't like the muzzle provision, if she did move to Lake Shastina and was not walking the dog in the city of Weed, that would not apply, correct?
Correct. We wouldn't have jurisdiction.
Well, I think, based on some of your comments and Mark's comments, I'm not sure about the muzzle. Muzzles are kind of, sometimes they stay on, sometimes they don't stay on. But I definitely feel that we need to have an enclosure of some sort. There's no doubt about that. So at least we've got safety while you're potentially working or not working or whatever, you've got your business doing. We need to have licenses. We need to have shots that go back to the original request from our animal control officer. My jury's out on the muzzle, and
I'll relent on that one, but I do think it needs to be in a harness if it's being walked.
And there might be one that has a used one somewhere around as well. Marketplace, Facebook. There's something for
I
everybody.
think it needs to be a humane enclosure. It would be,
Yeah.
and what that size would be, I haven't seen the size of the dog, but
6 by 6 at least.
yeah, I would say 6 by 6.
Yeah. It's if it's in the house, that's one thing, but when it goes outside, it's either on the leash, and if you're gonna just let it be by itself, then it's in the enclosure.
The bottom
Otherwise,
line is,
we're limited.
the bottom line is that you have to be a responsible dog owner. But we're here. Okay, so why did he have her that day? Well, look, you know what? I'm looking out for the citizens of Weed here. I believe you love your dog, Jody. I have no doubt in my mind you do. But you're asking me anyway, that I have to, whatever decision they make or I make, that we have to trust that you're going to do the right thing, and this dog won't be able to get out or bite anybody. Well, I've read the reports and I've read some of the You didn't get the rabies, did you?
I think we're just kind of going over the same thing. So I think the enclosure is definitely a good idea. License and shots are mandatory before the dog is released, and so is the enclosure. Anything else that you guys feel?
My concern is that the way that this fight happened was by the dogs getting loose. And my concern is that if we mandate an enclosure,
They can get out.
well, the result is fine, I'll leave the dog in the house the entire time. The dog in the house the entire time slips the door. That's the whole problem.
No, she's got to go out with closure. She has to go outside several times a day. She just has to go out. So she's not in the house 24 hours a day. And she's only slipped that chain if somebody wasn't paying attention.
It's,
She's in the house, not all day. Usually she's on the run even in the house.
if it's part Ridgeback, it's not a small dog. Ridgeback's a big dog. Well, I think the enclosure is a mandatory thing for me. I don't want to put an animal down for this necessarily, but the license, the shots, the enclosure,
I think the license and the shots are already required by our code, so
Right.
it seems to me.
They've been required by our code. That's one of the issues that have been prevailing.
It seems to me obey with all the dog laws, of weed. Must have an approved fence or enclosure no less than 6 by 6 approved by the animal control officer. Pay the bill of the other party for their vet.
Has the other party requested payment of the bills?
So before the dog could be released, if it is, does all those have, those rabies and license and all that have to be done before that dog leaves that pound?
Well, I would ask our city attorney if those are all acceptable conditions.
And
Yes, we can specify that those are conditions precedent to actual release. I think that is appropriate. The caveat there is that continuation of impoundment should not exceed 30 days from the date of this hearing under subsection C. At that point, we might have to reconsider options.
understood. I would recommend, at least my view is that the dog needs to be spayed. Spayed. Those would be my conditions for release of the dog.
Is it a male? Is it a male? Is it female? Kind of cost prohibitive, I mean, but, I don't think about what we're talking about.
I'd ask Mackenzie one further question. If, based on that 30 days and her time frame that she's stating she may be out of the city in 30 days, if she were to prove relocation during that time, would we still require the full stipulations set forth?
If the dog is still in the city's control, I think we would still have jurisdiction over handling the management of that dog from that point. That would be my reading of it. Once returned to the owner, if the owner is no longer a resident of the city, then I think jurisdiction would cease.
I agree with that. I mean, if she moves, but there's no guarantee that people move.
No, but we're talking about 30 days time frame. That's the time frame she was mentioning she may be gone. So I was just wanting to know if we reach that 30 days, she's saying I'm living in Lake Shastina, what would we do at that point? But it sounds as though we would still hold her to the stipulations.
I believe you could still impose conditions on the release, and at that point it might be necessary to talk to animal control officers in Lake Shastina to discuss handoff there.
So let me get this clarified, Mackenzie. If within 30 days, Ms. Smith moves out of the city of Weed to Lake Shastina, we could impose these provisions, but only if Ms. Smith moved back to the city of Weed with Jenna.
No, I think if the dog was still in the city's custody, the city has control over the terms on which it would release the dog from its custody. It wouldn't necessarily just cease to have jurisdiction because she has moved. I think once the dog has been released from the city's custody, that's where the analysis differs.
Okay.
Because that just transfers responsibility onto the county without notification of the county. So the dangerous dog thing, it constantly runs you wherever the dog is registered. So when she would go in and she's registering with the county, she needs to report all of that stuff to the county, all of the potentially dangerous dog, all of that kind of information, and then from there the county oversight
That was mentioned already, but Lake Shastina is in the county. It's a district in the county, so she already mentioned the fact that we would give notice to Lake Shastina's animal control officer, which is probably the county control officer.
So the registration process wouldn't align correctly, and you would lose accountability as well.
He's right. It's in the county.
That's to be registered officials, and I have to let each county know as I move them, okay? We're not talking about registered officials, we're talking about putting where options come up and making real both ways. I mean, I'm not understanding, I'm asking you to register officials, because what is a guard dog and what is a official dog? registering them as vicious or dangerous. Those laws apply. But
Two different registrations. Vicious is one, and dangerous and potentially dangerous.
what is a guard dog?
Well, these are legal terms.
Okay,
So,
what is a guard dog?
Okay, we're not gonna get into a discussion about the legalities of it.
What's the difference between vicious?
What we're gonna do is we're gonna make a decision based upon how we see it, and based out of the argumentative nature, I'm thinking I'm making a wrong decision. That's.
It looks like Mayor Parham is trying to speak, but his audio isn't going through. Can you hear him?
And the dog pays the price.
I see Mayor Parham is trying to speak, but I do not hear him. Can anyone else hear him or myself?
Got your microphone on? Can't hear you, Darrell.
Mayor Parham, we cannot hear you.
We spend a lot of time on the dog. All these are.
Can she agree to an additional 30 days, we table it, and she can come back in 1 month and convince us that she has waived the dog sale?
Darrell? No, Darrell, did you leave?
I think he's.
All right, is the audio working now?
Yes. Yes.
All right, let me try and fix the video. Sorry, guys, the technical issues. I think I've got it working now. Maybe. Okay, am I back now? Okay, you guys can hear me?
You're back.
Yes.
All right, sorry about the delay there. So here's my 2 cents worth. And I don't want to see the dog destroyed. I've trained hunting dogs when I was younger. With that said, I've had police at my business on Main Street because of loose dogs and weed, being aggressive toward employees at my business and at the neighboring business. So, based on the reports that were given, we've got 2 years of negligence on rabies vaccinations. We have a dog who's been running loose around town, but I don't feel from what I've seen in the evidence, the dog should be destroyed because of that. My proposal would be that the dog would be released after receiving vaccination and licensure to be up to code with our law, and that if that is not done within 30 days, then move on with the destruction of the animal. If the owner is as adamant about making this right, then I don't see why that couldn't be accomplished within 30 days. In regards to the dog that was injured in the alleged off-leash attack, I think that would be a civil matter between those two parties. I don't know that it would be ethical for this council to levy that payment should be made. I certainly know how I would handle it if it was my dog that was attacked, but that's here nor there. The other stipulation that I think should be put is that if the dog is returned and those conditions are met within 30 days, that the dog is not off the owner's property without being in a proper harness and leash, so this can't occur again of slipping a collar. I think those are fair and reasonable ways to avoid destroying the animal, while at the same time keeping the public safe and following our ordinances.
I have a question for Mackenzie. Can the dog be deemed potentially dangerous?
That is not a defined term in chapter 6.28. There is a separate chapter that applies to, what is it called? There is a separate control of and impoundment of dog section. So that isn't a term of art in your code, but I'm not sure if that distinction.
I thought it was in there. I thought I thought you could deem a dog potentially dangerous, or you can deem a dog vicious.
Councilman, that's under the Food and Ag Code.
Pardon?
That's under the Food and Ag Code.
Yeah, you can't.
Yes. There's those two definitions, but I will point out, as Mackenzie said, those are, Food and Ag Code does not match the municipal code. The definition of vicious in our municipal code is not the same as it is in the Food and Ag Code.
The reason I'm saying that, then there is a paper trail part of it, and it'll protect Jody, it'll protect the dog, it'll protect gentlemen or other folks that have to deal with this. And wherever they're going to move and live, then that gets forwarded. So that's all I'm asking.
I'm not really confident in the fact that we can measure, once she moves out of our jurisdiction, if we can measure how that is dealt with from the county level. So I believe that once we do this, the gentleman on the left is correct, is that we do lose control, okay? Which also means that wherever that dog ends up is out of our control. So that's part of the decision that we're making here. If we do anything at all, I would still stick with the fact that before the dog is released, that she has up to 30 days, and if this is not met, then the dog would be euthanized. But she has up to 30 days for the license, the shots, and the enclosure. And if all of those conditions are not met, then euthanasia is our option. I don't know.
It doesn't sound like the enclosure is a reasonable stipulation considering the property that the dog resides at. I think, requiring that the dog, when he's off property, is on a proper harness and leash is going to be a better alternative and something more likely to be achievable.
Well, the only other thing is she has no fenced yard, and so there's nowhere, if she lets that dog out, that dog is going to be running free again.
Well, the answer is
And
the dog's got to be on a
That's the point.
harness.
The dog isn't let out. There are tenants in the apartments down the street from my business that have a dog in an upstairs apartment. When they walk their dog, they take it on a leash to go for its walks.
My son has the same thing. It doesn't mean
So, based on, my observation of citizens who follow the ordinances with their animals in town, that's achievable. My concern here is that requiring an enclosure may not be something that can be done timely based on external factors, finances, contractors, things like that. Having the requirement that the dog is taken out for its walks and outside time on an appropriate harness and leash, I think is a more reasonable expectation that can be achieved.
I have a legal question for Mackenzie. If there's private property that's surrounding this particular building, can we mandate that the dog be on a harness and a leash, given the fact that there's no fence?
On the owner's own property?
Yes.
Yes, you can mandate that anytime they're off the leash, or outside of the home, that they be leashed.
Right.
Well, my only issue is if that dog bites another dog.
I agree. I'm trying to find a compromise that is achievable without having to destroy the dog, but not putting our fellow citizens at risk.
I'm just basing my statement on responsibility factors that have occurred already. So, anyway, how's the rest of the council feel?
I'll be really honest. I'm very concerned, Jody, based on your statements here, that you're not going to follow what we're asking to. And I'm trying, just listen for a minute. I am trying to save your dog. And what I'm hearing back from you is fighting us about what we're trying to do to save your dog. Don't just let me talk. That behavior right there is fighting back on us trying to save your dog. And so I am with great hesitancy trying to do what I can to be able to save your grandbaby's dogs, not necessarily yours. And it's going to be a zero tolerance situation. Because if I go along with this, I am going to ask that animal control officer and that chief to be all over this to see if you're in compliance. And so I want you to honestly think about whether or not you can do it, because it's a huge liability that this city would be taking on. I'm not sure you do by what has occurred here. But see, that's my problem, is when you say my dog doesn't have a problem and we know your dog has a problem because we have evidence in front of us, it tells me that you're not going to take the actions to make sure that that dog is appropriately taken care of. You wouldn't be fighting us on that concept. Listen to what you're saying. You're saying the evidence in front of us is wrong, I'm right, my dog's not vicious, I'm going to continue to do what I did in the past, and everything's going to be fine. That's what I'm hearing from you right now. Well, your responsibility was your dog when it disappeared for 3 days as well, and it fell through the cracks there. I don't know. I'm getting more and more convinced that my position is incorrect.
I've already come to that.
What I want to hear is that you accept the fact that I want to hear the fact that you accept that your dog mauled another dog. Okay. Okay, so you're prepared to say Jenna mauled another dog. Okay. I think that answers my question. No, Jenna mauled another dog.
Right there.
All right, I'm ready. No, because I have no idea which way I'm going to vote.
Mackenzie, as a follow-up, if we move forward with my proposal and the dog is off leash on another person's property in public and harms another animal or, God forbid, a person, is there any liability to the city of Weed if we could decide to go this route tonight?
I am not aware of how the city would be liable for that, no.
Okay, thank you. I just want to have clarification before I make a decision.
Council, I'd also like to add for all parties present, the property that they keep talking about is private. We have a letter from the property owner, not related to them, but to anybody, that if they don't want anybody on that property. That's why we patrol that property. So where this incident occurred, where they can continue to take their dogs is private property that they don't have permission to be on. So I'll just put that out there.
Microphone. Ken?
I will make a motion that Jody has 30 days to license and give shots to the dog. And failing to do so, we'll leave option B open, which is euthanasia. That's a reluctant motion, but I will make that motion.
I will offer a friendly amendment.
Okay.
My friendly amendment is that that dog is not to be anywhere outside of the confines of the house without a properly fitted harness. That is one that surrounds the dog's neck and its legs, and on a leash. Whether it is maintained on private property, whether it is walked off of private property, anywhere within the city's lead. And failure to do so would cause us to, Mackenzie, I don't know how you would word this, but I don't know what we can do if there's a violation of that.
Your code provides that violations of the conditions you impose may or shall result in the animal being impounded and destroyed.
Great. Then I would say then there's a strong incentive that that dog remain on a harness, because if it's off, it will be recaptured and euthanized.
That's a good amendment.
I will second the motion with the as amended, in the hopes that we can salvage the animal and not have any issues going forward.
May I just ask a clarifying
First,
question?
and a second on the amended motion.
Mayor Pro Tem, clarifying question, when you say shots, you're referring to fully vaccinated?
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
No. Come on, Sandy.
No, are we, I'm sorry, was the spade included in that, because it was mentioned multiple times? No?
No.
Okay.
No, we're there, but
Although I think it would help the dog.
it's been,
Are we voting?
yeah, it's been first seconded on that amended motion. All in favor?
We got it.
May I, before I get the motion, can I just read my draft conditions to you all to make sure that it's meeting the need and you're comfortable with it?
Sure.
Okay. You order the subject animal to be returned to its owner subject to the following conditions. Prior to release of the subject animal from the city's custody and control, and within 30 days of the effective date of this resolution, owner shall submit proof of current city dog license and rabies vaccination to the city's animal control officer. This next one is where I'm getting a little reading between the lines on the harness piece. Prior to the release of the subject animal from the city's custody and control, within 30 days of the effective date of this resolution, owner shall bring a harness to the city animal, or the city animal control officer shall approve the harness before release. Is that something you would want to require?
Yes.
Okay, I will put that in. After release of the subject animal from the city's custody and control, the dog must be securely harnessed, leashed, and under the control of a person 18 years of age or older who is physically capable of restraining the animal when the subject animal is not securely confined in the owner's dwelling. Violations of the foregoing conditions shall result in the subject animal being impounded and destroyed.
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good to me. Any public, one public comment? Yes.
Just due to the fact that you guys are all aware of the resistance and you have covered your side of that, I do believe the attorney has the ability to provide stipulation of payment in a reasonable amount of time. And I'm not asking for it like right now today or anything, but I would be required to file with small claims court, bring her in, serve papers, do all of this type of stuff. You guys could literally just tell her right now that's part of the stipulation of it. And it doesn't have to be the 30-day thing. You can spread it out a little bit, but make it reasonable. I mean, I'm giving you guys the opportunity to take care of it for me, and it would be very helpful.
Melissa, I guess, huh?
You mean Mackenzie?
Mackenzie, I'm sorry. Does this?
I'll interject. I'd say that this is a civil matter between these two dog owners, as Mayor Parham noted. I think you could require some kind of payment of a fee or posting a bond or certificate of insurance for the city's benefit, but ordering payment to another citizen, I don't see that as necessarily authorized under your code and could be an interesting precedent to set.
So you're telling us that that last little bit would be a civil matter completely? And you're,
As to between the damages between those two owners, yes.
okay.
So legally, we can't do it, is what our lawyer's telling us.
You can take a little time to do a little research on that. I do believe that you have that ability.
I think,
If you can find somebody for property taxes or any of the other types of things, it is a civil thing, but it is a criminal element, and you're charging her restitution for the criminal element.
Well, it's not a criminal charge with restitution that's recognized in our code. And the other thing is we're not making a determination as to who is the more, in other words, in making a decision about the vicious dog, we're not saying which percentage each party contributed to the event, which does in fact change the total restitution.
The law is completely clear on that, and it is that the person's dog that does the damage to the other one is responsible for the damage exclusively in your own
Not
codes.
necessarily true.
In your own codes. If I had the time, I can bring it right to you. I don't want to argue with you, but I do.
You're arguing with a lawyer about what the law is.
No, I know that.
So,
But I know she has the ability. She's just.
well, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not willing to take on a legal bill for the city in order for this. So.
no, and actually,
You're not. You're ordering her to pay restitution to me, not to you.
actually, your proper place is small claims court. It's a court of equity, and I believe you'll have more success there than anywhere else. And we won't be making that particular decision as to restitution. That again is a civil matter, and that's why we asked. So we can.
So I'll just
we can
clarify.
only do that.
I just want to clarify your stance is that the dog that was released, known without vaccination, back to the owner, that was eventually escaped 2 more times and then attacked my dog and caused permanent injuries to it, and I'm just going to have the city cover your ends of it and your responsibilities, and even say that you're going to pass it on to the county in a sense that it alleviates you of the responsibility, but it actually creates more responsibility on your part because you're intentionally dodging the responsibility of the dog in your control by relocating it to a county location. Okay? You would have to petition it, and even now, I believe the stipulations would require a petition to the Superior Court to actually do this. I don't even know if at this point this hearing fully entails the responsibility of what's to be done.
We hear your position.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I don't know what else we can do for you. Okay.
I think we have to take a oral vote, correct? Because Mr. Mayor's on.
We have a first and we have a second.
That is correct.
Do we have to redo that since we took on public comment?
No, that's no.
Okay. So let's get a vote.
Councilmember Mazzoni?
No is for not putting it down?
You would say yes if you want to approve the, no?
Approve for the 30 days and all of that stuff. No.
Councilmember Papini?
It's a toughie. I trust dog nature. I'm not trusting human nature much. But I will say yes.
Councilmember Whitson?
I am a very reluctant yes.
Mayor Parton?
Aye. Okay. With that vote, the motion passes. So folks, sorry, let's move on to consent agenda.
before we begin, I have an announcement on the consent agenda. I need to recuse myself from, I believe it's item A on the Melrose resolution, as I have an interest in real property that is my personal residence within the area, and so I will not partake in that.
You want to we can withdraw that, or we can...
No, she just has to make that announcement that she will not be voting on item A of the consent agenda.
Okay. With that in mind, I will read the consent agenda. Finance by motion. Council will consider adopting resolution number 15-2026, acting in its capacity as the legislative body of the City of Weed, Community Facilities District number 2009-1, Municipal Services, providing for the levy of the special tax for fiscal year 26-27. B, Public Works by motion. Council will consider resolution 16-2026, adopting project list for 26-27 SB1, the Road Repair Accountability Act. C, Public Works by motion. Council will consider resolution number 17-2026, approving change order number 5 in the amount of $137,605.72 to Shasta Services Inc. DBA Timber Works for the bypass water supply pipeline project. D, Administration by motion. Council will consider second reading and adoption by title only of ordinance number 490/2026, amending section 2.12.070 of chapter 2.12 and chapter 2.16, or title 2 of the Weed Municipal Code. City Clerk by motion. Council will consider approval of the March 12th, 2026 regular meeting minutes. By motion, Council will consider approving payment warrants dated March 25th, 2026 through April 2nd, 2026, including any voided warrants or manual issued items totaling $350,168.18. By motion, Council will consider approval and filing of the end-of-month report for March 2026. Any items to be removed from consent?
Nope.
So I can entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to pass the consent agenda A through G.
I'm sorry, did we ask for public comment?
Public comment, we lost all the public. But anyway, no public comment's been given, so the motion's been made. Do I get a second?
I'll second.
Oh, you can. Also, okay, Darrell seconds the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I think we have to do a roll call vote.
Councilmember Mazzoni,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Councilmember Balfini,
Aye.
Councilmember Whitstein, Councilmember Parham.
Aye.
Items removed, nothing. Next, council business. Discussion item with possible direction. Council will discuss the building on Main Street destroyed by the Main Fire and available funding sources for remediation of same, including but not limited to the use of Mill Fire settlement funds. I get a report?
I just need city council guidance. We've got an open RFP that we sent you the letter from earlier this week from our attorneys working, or McKinsey working with PACE. We've got the RFP and the task order ready to go. But the main question is I need to know, this is an unexpected bill. Jill has laid out where our funds are at and what is currently our understanding of earmark. I just want to know what you want us to do.
Well, one of my questions is first question is, what kind of grant funding have we obtained to help with the billing at all?
Well, I've been working with Emma, with Siskiyou County Economic Development on some possible brownfield options. The problem is, we're still working on that. I've also applied to help with some of our other projects. Senator Schiff recently sent out a request for possible projects, and I submitted the Lagoon project, which would help free up some of this stuff. It's about $7 million. When we talked to USDA last week, one of the reps there actually oversees those grant applications, and he says that he sent ours off. I don't know if that's guaranteed approval, but those are at least some of the things that I've personally applied for. I know that we talk to USDA and their representatives pretty regularly to try to. There's a lot of grant funding already approved. It's just been stalled in the pipeline due to multiple factors, including the Congress and all the shakeups and stuff going on. So there's a lot of things that are approved already. Some of it's slow. We also have the Lincoln Park stuff that we'd already approved that's going to be moving forward. So those are some of the things that we've done, that they did way before I got here to get that process moving.
So if we agreed to shift some funding from the mill fire.
Well, there has not been any stipulation.
Excuse me, from, well, what I'm thinking is we need funding. The only available money at this point in time is some of the mill fire, not that I want to spend it there, but could we use some of it to initiate the RFP process? Because based on what I was looking at, if we do the RFP and do all of the paperwork, we are roughly about 4 months down the road.
That's correct.
So can we move money for now and hopefully, if we're lucky, receive some funding back from any of those other sources to kind of replenish so that we don't have to keep, in other words, the mill fire money is there for a specific purpose, and I think the whole council is aware of that. However, due to unforeseen circumstances, we also have some asbestos cleanup that needs to be taken care of, and the sooner the better, because that stuff is just floating through the air.
We are, sorry to interrupt, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, but the fire department has been regularly keeping it watered down.
I know, but sooner or later, I mean, if there is exposure there, no matter how we do it, whether it goes down into the drains or however it gets there, pollution doesn't sit still for us all. So I don't know, that was my thought when I was reading all of those numbers. Not to take away from just one pot to supplement another, but can we shift the funding back and forth? We used to call it like interagency transfers and stuff like that. I guess this doesn't quite meet that category, but again, I don't know what it's going to take to get the RFP and all of the studies together just to even work on that site. And I don't know the funding behind it, so maybe you can help me out.
So I have a question though. Why do we have to move any money over right now until we wait? Because we're talking 4 months before we get anybody even bidding. Am I right in thinking that?
I think you're probably out at least 2 months before the RFP goes out, because we're still waiting on the engineer's report, I believe, and it has not been reviewed by legal. So that's not going to go out for probably at least 2 months. So I gave you all the analysis I gave you was general fund money. Even though we call it the mill fire settlement, it's general fund money. Some of the defederalized CDBG funds, it's general fund money. we don't consider it in our daily operations, because that is not revenue that's going to reoccur. So that's why we don't, it's not money that's ever going to happen again. So basically, you know, I kind of listed out the expenses that we've incurred, and then they've been a lot. We're up to over $1 million now on City Hall that we weren't counting on. That was supposed to be $250,000, and now we're over $1 million. I mean, the Black Butte, we didn't count on that happening. And yeah, I believe we need to pursue grant funds for multiple projects. I mean, we need to look at building a fire station now. I wish we would have gone after that in the SHIP funds, but we did not. But yes, we have some time, and yes, I do think we should still be pursuing other avenues for funding.
So can we come back to this at a later date, or wait and see if any funds come through or anything like that?
Absolutely. I do want to comment on the SHIF grant. You can't just apply for it. In order to apply for the SHIF grant, if you actually go through the questionnaire, it actually wants numbers, it wants plans, and it wants legitimate stuff. You can't just request it. So in order for me to get the project that I did submit it, I needed 2 letters of submit and 2 letters of support that I had to scramble to get. But I had all of the numbers there for the lagoon from all the previous work that our engineers did. So what we're working on right now with the fire station, which we had a meeting with USDA last week, we had a long conversation about not just the loan option, but we're going after grant options, and they're going to walk us through the entire thing. It was actually a very productive conversation. So but the snag right now is that in order to get an architect to get us those numbers so I can start applying for those grants, I need engineers and architects to get us to a point where I can apply for those grants. I can't just ask. When you go through those grant applications, you have to have real information. And so I went with the lagoons. Now we're at the point where the fire station, we need architects, which is going to be, if we are going by the numbers presented to us by LB3 Steel, or I think that's right, they have an architect would have been $150,000, and that kind of squashed my original plan, which was the $25,000 that was there for that. So now we're working with USDA, which what they told us last week is we can actually group what we paid for the architects, which we're utilizing Pace Engineering to help us walk through that process in congruence with the USDA reps that we've been working with, so we can get that process rolling. Also, they also told us last week that if we get grant funds that'll eventually offset the loan, that is acceptable throughout the entire process. So I'm going to continue once I get more information, like Jill says, I will go after more grants. But I need that information first. Just going to the questionnaire of trying to apply for SHIP, I originally wanted to submit 3 projects, but I only had enough information for 1. And so that's where I'm at with that.
So,
Mayor?
So in regards to the Main Street, which was the discussion item here, my experience in the last few years with grants is that yes, maybe not shovel ready, but you do have to have a project scope. And nobody's going to just give you millions of dollars because you have an idea. So my perspective on this is we need to move forward with the RFP so that we can apply for grants, for one, because then we have a project scope that has been reviewed by engineering and legal. Number 2, this council unanimously decided to move forward with acquiring those properties from a delinquent private property owner, with the intention of cleaning up the public nuisance and abating the hazard potential that is there from known lead and asbestos and other contaminants from the burn site. We knew we were going to have to clean this up. the decision was that we were gonna take ownership and do it now, as opposed to letting it sit with the potential private ownership for 5 or 6 years while the legal, process goes through its course. So going for an RFP isn't, and Mackenzie, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't saying that we're, committing to spending that money, but we can't move forward with making any moves for grants or any potential cleanup without the RFP and having those numbers, knowing what it's gonna take, knowing what it's gonna cost. We've already, started down this path. We have a huge hazard site on our main street, and to not move forward with an RFP, in my mind, is unacceptable to the citizens of Weed with the work that we've done so far. I think the discussion on what's available for funding, where that funding comes from, and how we pay for that RFP is a discussion we need to have, but we need to have the RFP in hand to have a viable discussion on the matter.
I'll just chime in that you are correct. Typically, issuance of an RFP would not even be a matter before the council. You would see it when the RFP process is complete and you are asked to approve the contract. And that is still going to occur after the RFP process is finished. You can decide we do not want to move forward and we are not going to commit funds.
So I think that was a lot. I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Basically, what I'm saying is the fact that we have to wait 2 months to make a decision, the RFP is already onerous at best. I think we need to move forward with the RFP and then have the financial discussion after we know what the cost is going to be.
And I was just going to state that was a lot of conversation just to say that, yes, we have the money to move forward with the RFP, but we definitely should still pursue any type of grant funding because we do have a time lag, so we have time to look into it.
Exactly what my point was.
Do we have, the way I read this before, correct me if I'm wrong, was that we have engineering costs, right?
Correct.
That are going to be, that bill to get those engineering costs also has to be paid.
Yes.
That's not something down, that's something that's immediate, and I can't remember the number, because there was a lot of numbers on that thing. It was 150,000 or something?
We pay PACE monthly, yes. They bill us monthly. We pay them on an ongoing basis for projects we're working on, whether we have grant funding established or not. So yes, we would be paying the engineers.
Okay, so that's coming through no matter what. So the RFP is the item we need to.
Yes, we need the RFP to move forward, correct.
And again, the other thing is one of those buildings in particular doesn't need a whole lot. The one on Clay Street, and I don't know what its value is. It's sure not. I'm sure it's not very high. But if we sell that property, we can do that, right, on its own.
We need to go through the surplus process first before we can talk about
But that is a potential. It's not going to get us very much.
But the Clay Street is not the question that I have. The question is, I just didn't want to move forward with the RFP unless I didn't want to do anything without talking to you first. That's my reason for asking today.
And I just asked another question, but yeah, I think that's what we have to do, but we have to do the RFPs. I was just hoping that they would be done by now.
Well, that's true.
It isn't, so it doesn't matter, but I was hoping it would be done by now. So I'm saying that if you have to use that money, and of course, because we have to clean it up. But if we can get some money coming in between now and the time that goes out and we start getting bids, and that's even better. So that's all I'm saying. That's my whole point on it, because I'm still staunch on that was a recovery for the Lincoln Heights area. And unfortunately, again, I think I repeated myself on a couple of these, something bad happened in the situation and we're kind of stuck right now. We didn't foresee all these other things, and it is what it is. So the decisions have to be made, and hopefully these are the right ones. But yeah, we have to clean that up. Just real quick, I had 3 people in the store question me at length about getting that thing cleaned up. And I told them it would be done this year, and then I found out later the RFP wasn't done. I'm like, oh. So I have to go back and tell them, it's scheduled to be done this year, but if it prolongs longer, then you can call me up in Georgia and yell at me. So pretty much all I need to say.
Well, I've been talking to a few of the folks that were directly impacted by mill fire and planting the seeds. There are, unfortunately, things that have developed that have been taken out of the panty a little bit around the block. But if we can get all of this managed, we'll be okay. So I'm getting, Melissa, did you have anything to say on the direction of this RFP?
I'm just concerned of how many RFPs we're undertaking at the same time.
I couldn't hear what you said.
I said I'm just concerned at how many projects for RFPs we're looking at the same time. Because realistically, we put together these RFPs, we go out to bidding, it comes back, then we're haggling over which one that we want to go forward with. Whatever bids that we have are going to be outdated given the way that prices are going and everything else. So with that being said, this city has been stagnant for quite some time, and I think we have the most competent team between financial individuals and a city manager and a wonderful city clerk that keeps pushing things through, that if we are going to do this, we've got the team to do it. And it scares the bejeebers out of me, but, you know, I think we have a number of very qualified, quality sets of eyes watching this balancing, and sometimes you have to take the risk. And I think taking the risk right now and getting the answers we need to move forward is what we got to do.
I think right now we have one RFP out, am I correct? And that is on the lagoons, and that is for, no?
No.
We don't have any
No.
current RFPs out there.
No.
Whatever you did was already paid for, I take it. You went for a grant.
I just submitted it to SHIP. So it's been sent to Congress. It goes through several approval processes.
That RFP was already.
It's not an RFP, it's just an application for a grant.
The previous RFP was out of general fund.
Yes.
So the only one we have current, not that we don't have more coming, so is the RFP on the downtown property.
Followed on my heels.
That's the one we're currently working on, yes.
Yeah, and then we have the fire, yes, and then we also have the sewer, and then we also have, I don't want to get you all distressed.
I think the direction is we got to go forward on the RFP.
Okay, so I think the direction, with this council is deciding, if I can speak there about it, is that we're going to give our approval for the city manager to move forward with an RFP, utilizing funds that are necessary from the mill fire. Is that the direction we kind of were looking for?
If that's what you want to do.
I don't think, we don't have a whole lot of choices, and I think that is, it's not what I want to do. None of it's what I want to do, but I think that's one of the things that we need to clean up Main Street. If we can do something with those properties, Main Streets generate funding for the city. But if we leave them in rubble, we know that's not generating anything. In fact, I think it's a detriment to our city. Even just cleaning them up will be a real positive sign for people. And we could use a little bit of that. So,
May I just interject and just maybe recommend the council at future agenda planning meetings that you consider possibly surplusing the other two properties as a potential funding source?
Of selling those two?
Yeah, we have to go through the HCD surplus properties
Right.
first. It has to be approved, but it's just a consideration. And then also, my understanding of the brownfield is they won't touch the burnt building, but once the rubble is gone, they will help with the ground cleanup, making sure that the earth is clean.
Mackenzie, if we surplus a building, can we still improve upon it? Or once it's surplus, do we have to leave it stagnant?
Well, I don't have a clear answer on that. Typically, when you declare something as surplus, you've determined that it is no longer being put to your use anymore. So I think that if you were to be improving the property, I'm not sure how that lines up with a finding that you are not actually putting it to the agency's use anymore. But I don't think that there's a clear, there's not going to be a case that says that. It's possible, I think.
Because the way that I see it is if we surplus those properties, but we need to make sure that they're going to go to proper use or something that is going to be beneficial to the city, there might have to be some concessions in order to be able to make those properties something the city would use. In that situation, you think we would be okay if it's already surplus?
I think, especially if it's couched in the terms of, say the potential buyer or whoever that is interested and you're in negotiations wants that as a condition of the purchase, I don't see anything preventing that, and I think that makes sense in that context. So no, I think it's defensible. It's just perhaps unusual, and maybe we'd want to ask for HCD's input on that. Not that I think they would necessarily want to take the position that the city shouldn't improve property. So,
thank you. I think with that, I would like to see a surplusing information potentially for the city council.
She's already provided it. Do you want me to send it to you in email?
Yes, please.
All right.
With that, you've got direction on, at least with the Mill Fire and the downtown district.
Well, I will go ahead and let PACE know that they should execute.
Perfect. That leads us to the cannabis legal update. Did I skip anything?
I don't think you skipped anything. I'll be candid, I'm not sure if after a 3-hour meeting you all want to watch my slideshow. It's probably the last thing you want to do. Listen to me drone on.
Okay, let's go through this real quick. Cannabis, okay, tomorrow.
Let me share my screen.
Smoke it if you got it. No, I'm just kidding, guys. I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't say stuff like that. I'm sorry.
Can you see my screen? Yep. We can? Okay. Sorry, here we go. Is that? All right, and you're seeing, okay, looks like you're seeing it now. Hopefully it lets me click, fine. All right, so this is stemming from some council inquiry about a cannabis ordinance update that was, I think, requested 5 years ago now at this point, and it has fallen through the cracks. Now that we have some turnover in your city attorney's office, and as well as different people sitting on the dais as council members, now seems to be a good enough time as any to touch base on what the current requirements are in the city, in the state, and get direction on what kind of amendments you might want to consider going forward or direction you want to give to staff. So I'll try to move through quickly, and we can always bring back this discussion later once you've had some time to chew on it. So I think people are aware that there's a bit of an incongruent status at the federal level. Cannabis is still a Schedule I substance that is a crime to possess federally, but the California voters and legislature have had a different take. And since 1996, with the approval of the Compassionate Use Act by voters with the adoption of Proposition 215, qualified patients have been able to obtain and use cannabis for medical purposes. In 2003, the legislature expanded upon that voter initiative, and that is the law that created the medical marijuana ID card system you have and granted some immunity for any criminal penalties for possession or cultivation of medical cannabis by qualified patients and caregivers. In 2015, we had a new law, the Medical Marijuana Regulation and Safety Act, which focused on state licensure for medicinal commercial cannabis use. And that includes cultivation, testing, manufacturing, labeling, dispensing, and delivering commercial medical cannabis. The next year, the voters adopted Proposition 64, which approved recreational cannabis use for those over 21 and up. It also allows personal cultivation of up to 6 plants in your private residence. And then a year later, there was a cleanup bill that consolidated these, the commercial cannabis for recreation and medicinal was combined into a single act, Medicinal and Adult Use Cannabis Regulation and Safety Act. So I'll just give a brief overview of the state license types. You can have a retail license, cultivation license, manufacturing license, distribution license, delivery, testing, and cannabis event organizer license. This is worth keeping in mind because currently your code allows retail and cultivation. You can choose to allow any, all, none of these license types to operate in your city. There is an exception for delivery that I'll get to on the next slide, but this is what the state has set up for licensure. To get a state license, you do need to show that you have approval from your jurisdiction and it's allowed in your jurisdiction. State law has a specific buffer and location requirement that is worth keeping in mind. For medicinal cannabis businesses, they cannot be located within a 600-foot radius of schools, kindergarten through 12th grade. The city cannot change this buffer status, this buffer radius. This is set by your health and safety code and cannot be modified. It's different for recreational cannabis businesses. State law sets a default buffer zone of 600 feet from sensitive receptors. This is a broader definition, including schools, daycare centers, and youth centers, but the statute specifically allows the city to modify this buffer zone. You can make it larger than 600 feet, smaller than 600 feet. You can also have distance requirements between these cannabis businesses themselves if you want them to not be coalesced in a certain area. State taxes, medicinal cannabis purchases are exempt from the state sales and use tax, but subject to other taxes like the state's excise tax and local taxes. Recreational marijuana is not exempt from the sales and use tax the way medical cannabis is. All right, so that's the overview. I'm sorry, you can see me twice. That's the overview of the state. Local control, though, there is a lot of case law saying that all of that does not mean that local jurisdictions give up their right to control how commercial cannabis activity is conducted in their city. State law requires that businesses obtain local licenses or permission. City authorization is required before a state license can be issued, and the city can determine whether and how it wants to allow any of those license types to operate. The exception is for cannabis delivery. If cannabis delivery is coming from a city that allows it, it has proper licensure, and it's legal in the source that delivery is emitting from, the city cannot prevent that delivery from occurring within its boundaries. So here is an overview of your chapters on cannabis. It's quite spread out and a little random. You have your cannabis business tax. You regulate commercial cultivation of cannabis. You regulate retail cannabis sales. You have some regulations on drug paraphernalia. And lastly, you regulate medical marijuana cultivation. The business license tax was adopted by voters in 2018. You can collect up to 10% of gross receipts on any cannabis business conducted in the city of Weed. And for cultivators, you are authorized to levy a tax of up to $10 per square feet of outdoor cultivation area, $18 for mixed light cultivation area, and $26 per square feet of indoor cultivation area. You can also set a lower amount, but you cannot exceed these maximum amounts set by voters. You can also differentiate the amount of tax based on whether it is medicinal or recreational cannabis activity. To operate a cannabis business in Weed, they need to register and annually renew their business registration with the city and pay a registration fee. And a business that pays the cannabis business license tax does not have to pay the general business license tax under Chapter 5.04. So for commercial cultivation, your code has a couple different license types, going from small to large here. Specialty cottage class A, that is for less than 500 square feet of total canopy size. Specialty class B, that's up to 5,000. Small, that is 5,000 to 10,000 total canopy size. Medium class C is indoor cultivation of between 10,000 to 20,000 square feet of canopy size. And you also have a somewhat different classification for nurseries, indoor sites that cultivate clones, immature plants, seeds, and other agricultural products for the propagation or cultivation of cannabis. So these commercial cultivation permits are valid for 5 years. There is an exception. This does not apply to the non-commercial cultivation of 6 or fewer plants that is authorized under state law. And the city recovers its reasonable costs in administering this program with program fees. It's worth keeping in mind here that these cultivation sites are allowed, they're permitted, apparently by right, in the light industrial or industrial zones. Cottage and nursery permits are also allowed in the commercial zone. And cottage and nursery permits can be on sites smaller than 1 acre in size. Specialty small and medium permits are only allowed on parcels greater than 1 acre or 1 acre or more. And with the approval of a conditional use permit, cultivation may be allowed within the premises or on the site on which a cannabis dispensary also sits. There is a slew of conditions that an applicant needs to satisfy to get a cannabis cultivation permit. Fingerprint and background checks, disclose any felony convictions, security and lighting plans, business operations, odor control plan, community relations plans, things of that nature. No juveniles are allowed on the site, no juveniles can be employed, and no consumption of cannabis can occur within 20 feet of the cultivation site. So retail cannabis sales are in a completely different section of your municipal code. You have 2 kinds of retail permits, storefront and non-storefront, aka delivery permits. Retail storefronts are only permitted in the downtown business district. You currently allow 2 retail storefronts, though your ordinance says you can change that. And you restrict access and what hours it can be open to the public. It must be closed between 9 p.m. and 8 a.m., but they can receive deliveries during that time. For non-storefront permits, you only allow 1 permit currently in the city. They can operate anytime, and these permits are valid for 1 year. They are non-transferable. You also have some specific design and location regulations for these storefront retailers. Public entrance and identifying signage must be readily visible and face the sidewalk on Main Street. You must have a sign that prohibits consumption of cannabis within 100 feet of that sign. They cannot have signs that portray cannabis leaves or contain the words weed or weed, although they could have existing historical signs grandfathered in if the council approved. And consumption may be allowed in or on the retail store premises with approval of a permit by the city manager. There is a brief chapter about the sale of drug paraphernalia, so things like pipes, glassware, things like that. A business that wants to sell drug paraphernalia needs an annual license from the chief of police to be able to display or sell those products. It's only allowed within the retail C1 commercial or general commercial C2 zoning districts. It requires approval of a use permit, and sales to minors are prohibited. Paraphernalia must also be displayed in a separate room with a sign prohibiting entry by minors. So last, you have a chapter on medical marijuana cultivation. You require that someone who is looking to cultivate cannabis for their own personal or for, if they're a caregiver, for their patient's use, that they seek a permit from your city clerk. Any medical marijuana must be cultivated at your primary residence. The purpose is, this is not a commercial activity. You cannot cultivate marijuana that has grown beyond 8 inches in height within your residence. After a seedling has exceeded that height, you would need to cultivate within a structure that is separate from your residence, like a detached garage, greenhouse, or other outbuilding. And the design of that outbuilding must confine the odor of the plant, shield the plant from view, and cannot constitute a safety hazard. And there are limits on the amount you can cultivate. You can have up to 12 plants. The calculation there is based on the 6-plant provision in state law, I believe, where a primary caregiver who has 2 qualified patients can cultivate 6 plants for both of those patients for 12 total. Outdoor cultivation is prohibited within 300 feet of any public city park playground, school, or library. The leaves of plants cannot be within 5 feet of the property boundary line, and they must be screened from view. So that was a rapid-fire overview of what you currently have on the books. Now is a fine time to give direction to staff if you want to explore changing those terms. You can modify the zones where activity is allowed. You can decide you want to permit additional types of commercial activity, like cannabis events, cannabis, all of the license types on the previous slide that and you can modify current site regulations. You can modify the current permit application procedures. I note here that the permit application process for a cultivation business is much more detailed in your code than the permit application procedure that is needed for retail storefronts or non-storefront retail. So one option is to streamline these regulations. You can consolidate the retail and cultivation processes and even combine them into one chapter, so all commercial activity is in one place. And you can also consider removing the regulations for medical cannabis cultivation that's in Chapter 1860. I put these here specifically because I believe that was the recommendation from your prior legal counsel, Ryan Reed. I found old staff reports, and I believe his recommendation was, let's do away with Chapter 1860. We are potentially burdening staff with administratively approving annual permits for small-scale medical cannabis cultivation that is, allowed by law. So I believe that was the recommendation, to remove that and try to consolidate your current regulations into maybe a clearer, more streamlined process and chapter. Other options not on this slide, you can choose to ask that staff prepare a resolution forming a committee for you all to look at this in closer detail. You can form an ad hoc committee. You can ask for staff to conduct a survey of the community on what changes they'd like to see. This is really just trying to give an overview of all of your options and see if you want to proceed with what I understand was the prior direction to remove 1860 and consolidate the retail and cultivation into one chapter. With that, I know I threw that was a lot at once. If you have any questions, I'm here for.
It was easier when it was yielding.
I have one for you, Mackenzie. What happens if we have a retail storefront and one of those sensitive areas moves into our main street?
At that point, I believe they would become, that cannabis site, that business becomes a non-conforming use. If they ever try to expand or seek different permits, things like that, they would be subject to your non-conforming use regulations and would likely have, any expansion would be denied because they would lose their non-conforming status at that point. But really, I think they have a vested right to continue where they are. We can't shut them down for it. But if they ever try to expand or change their use in any way, that would be denied.
But they only have their vested right during the period of time that their current retail license is active, correct?
Correct.
So if, I don't remember what it is, I think it was 5 years on that one or 1 year. So when they, for instance, if one of those sensitive type businesses moved into Main Street and it was coming up to the expiration date, we couldn't even go into the non-conforming status?
I think you're correct that at that point you would deny their renewal application because they would now be within that buffer range.
Okay. And then my other question is actually for Jill, and I don't mean to put Jill on the spot, but I was surprised to see that there's any tax revenue off of this. Do we know how much we get in the city of Weed from it?
Well, currently, because we only have one retail outlet, it's between $4,000 and $5,000 a month.
Okay.
It's 3% now, isn't it?
Yeah, it was set at 3%, and that's where it's remained.
It's authorized up, it's authorized up to 10, right, Mackenzie?
Correct.
So at some point, the city council lowered it to 3.
No, it was at 0, so the city council actually set it at 3. It was at 0 for a long time.
Okay. So we can do up to 10%.
Yes.
So I think with the amount of nuance and detail involved with this, it might behoove us to form an ad hoc committee to go into the weeds, no pun intended, with our legal counsel on this subject. One, to make sure we're in compliance with state law as it sits today, and two, looking at options such as polling the community to get feedback, as well as maybe including this in a future town hall discussion would be worthwhile. But there's, I think, a lot more than we're going to be able to get through scope tonight.
I think an ad hoc committee would be fine, but I would also want to make sure that we don't have a lot of businesses that are generating anything, and I would hate to get rid of one that is generating a profitable margin. But I think we definitely need to simplify for staff, simplify for the PD, simplify for everybody. This is under like 6 different codes, and it's kind of, hold on, let me look it up and I'll see what page we're on,
Well, I'd add to what Mackenzie said. The medical in particular predates Prop 64, and you can only regulate how they grow inside of the building. You cannot keep them from growing within their residence. So that's just one conflict that we have there in that aspect. But again, that's because it predates and it's never been changed since Prop 64.
I think just simplifying, right? I mean, that would help us a lot on everything. It seems to be what we've been attempting to do with just about all of our codes is make sure that they're consolidated and make sure that we're not doing duplication and just making the approach easier for staff, whether it's PD or whether it's Sandy doing permits or Jill doing calculations somewhere. I mean, it's just simple is better.
If I could just request it simplified and under its own section and not in about 6 different sections, that would be wonderful. It's its own section.
That's without being said, right? I mean, it's like 5, 6, 9, 18. Okay. Anyway, I think, Mr. Mayor, would you want to do an ad hoc committee, and you can think about how you want to structure that and do your own polling?
I would like to, well, one, I think our ad hoc committee needs to include our city manager and our city attorney. I would like to nominate Councilmember Wetstein.
If I can, do you mind if I draft a resolution and bring it to the next council meeting, and at that point we will ask for appointment so the public can know that it's being created?
No, I think that's a great idea. But I want to encourage council members to think about volunteering for the ad hoc committee once we have the resolution.
So if she brings a resolution forward, then we can at least then appoint the committee and talk to those people that are going to be impacted.
Have a scope and timeline.
What was that?
I think we need to look at a resolution, appoint the committee in the next month or so, as well as the scope and timeline, so we can define what we're trying to do. And but we're hoping what we're looking for the outcome of the ad hoc committee to be for them to have a scope of work and a timeline to get it done.
Sounds good to me, so that's where we'll go. We'll just, wait for the resolution. Do we need a motion to do that? It wasn't a motion, it was just information?
No motion.
Okay, so with that, we will move on to staff reports. Shoot the horse. Anyway, Chief Carter.
All right. Good evening. The fire department continues to hold our members to the highest standard of integrity, honesty, respect, honor, and duty to serve our community every day through emergency response, training, equipment maintenance, and physical fitness. While holding these standards, we responded to over 50 calls for emergencies and over 100 hours of training last month, with only 3 full-time personnel, 7 resident firefighters, and 2 volunteer firefighters. Tomorrow we have 5 resident firefighters and 2 volunteers graduating from the fire academy. With the academy graduation, we will lose 4 resident firefighters and 1 volunteer to paid positions with other agencies. Over the last month, 6 life safety inspections were completed, and on April 18th, there's going to be a South County Wildland Readiness Training happening at COS from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's an annual required training for all of our members and local agencies. So you will see an increase in fire traffic during that time. That's all I have.
Hopefully just fire personnel traffic.
Perfect.
Yeah, I would also let them know that there's gonna be a whole lot of kids around there. No blaring down with the sirens, although the kids would probably get a kick out of it. Finance Director Jill.
Nothing for me tonight, thanks.
Okay, thanks. Chris.
I got nothing tonight.
Man, we wore you out, huh? Chief Mayberry.
We anticipate filling our 8th spot that's been vacant next week with the swearing in, so we'll hopefully have a new face for you guys to be introduced to. I was just stating that we anticipate filling the 8th officer position next week, doing a swear-in. You'll see a new face around. We'll hopefully get them around to introduce them all to all of you. So,
When is the swearing in?
it'll be Monday,
10 a.m.
10 a.m.
Thank you.
That's the plan for that.
Nothing.
Nothing from Sandy? And for our fearless leader.
Just wanted to thank Mackenzie for putting together that presentation, and I want to thank staff. Y'all are wonderful. I'm good.
Can I go back to the chief for 1 second? Sorry. Hesitantly, I ask, do we still have enough patrol vehicles?
We have one on order using past TOPS money. That's been taking on average 4 to 5 months to get here. We're doing all right now. We're working on converting the old K9 unit back into a patrol unit. It's just a matter of changing the cage out and a couple other things. So we should be okay for now.
Okay, and is our vehicle salvageable?
I haven't been able to assess that yet, fully.
Thank you.
With that, I'll entertain a motion to go home. Okay, I'll make the motion to go home.
Thank you, everyone.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks for putting up with this, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Talk to you later.
Thank you for tolerating my technical difficulties.
You're good.
Ken loves running meetings, I can tell.